"You'll never be half the man my ex is," she said, loud enough for the couple 2 tables over to hear. That's the moment everything shifted. Not when she said it, but when the silence afterwards sank in like wet concrete. Forks hovered. Glasses froze midair. I watched a drop of wine cling to the rim of her goblet, like even it wanted to get the hell out. Across from me, Denise smirked with the confidence of a woman who thought she'd won something. It was our anniversary. 40 years since we met. 36 since we married. 24 since we moved into that house I spent 2 years designing from scratch. 12 since I retired and gave her the freedom to find herself through yoga, a nonprofit board seat, and, apparently, reminiscing about her high school quarterback ex like he was some kind of life benchmark. She looked at me like she expected a reaction. I gave her none. I finished chewing. Swallowed. Dabbed the corners of my mouth with the cloth napkin like I was judging a steak, not a marriage. Then I nodded once, evenly. "Thanks for the update," I said. Her friends at the table, our friends, once upon a time, shifted uncomfortably. Carol reached for the check. Mitch pretended to get a work call. The waiter stood there with my creme brulee, deciding whether to place it or flee. But I didn't move. Didn't blink. I took the dessert. The thing no one realized, especially Denise, was that my silence wasn't shock. It was strategy. I had already known. The way she'd been leaving subtle hints like breadcrumbs from a woman who wanted to get caught, but needed to feel like a victim when she did. The gym bag that always smelled like cologne that wasn't mine. Her sudden rediscovered taste for whiskey sours, his old favorite. According to a yearbook she once drunkenly forced me to flip through. The playlist on the kitchen speaker, all 90s throwbacks. Nostalgia with a heart-on. And the telltale symbol? She wore the emerald necklace he gave her in college. The one I found in a sealed box in our attic 5 years ago and never mentioned. She claimed she pawned it during a rough patch. Now, there it was around her neck, glinting like a neon sign screaming I miss him. So no, I wasn't surprised. I was calibrated. I watched her laugh as we left the restaurant, arm in arm with Carol, whispering loud enough for me to hear. He just sat there. Like a statue. Doesn't even fight for me. They thought I'd cracked. That I'd retreat back into the quiet little man cave she never visited. That I'd stew and lick invisible wounds while she played coquette on social media and slid her ring off for photo shoots. But I wasn't stewing. I was downloading. Because 2 months earlier, I'd hired a digital forensics firm. Nothing flashy, just a friend's referral after Denise mistakenly sent me a Venmo mint for someone named Jay. The note said, "Last night was fire," followed by 3 chilly emojis and a wink. I played dumb. "Is this for me?" She replied. "Oops, meant to send it to Janet." Right, Janet, who lives in Iowa and thinks texting is evil. That oops cost her everything. I had to mirror her phone, quietly, legally. Every photo, note, app backup, and voice memo now mirrored to a separate cloud folder she didn't know existed. I didn't even look at it right away. I waited. Let her dig the hole. Let her pour champagne into it. Now it was deep. And after that dinner, the final shovel full had been tossed. In the parking lot, she asked me, "Not gonna say anything?" I looked at her like she was a background actor in someone else's movie. Then unlocked the car door and got in without a word. Let her talk. Let her gloat. Let her pull out her phone and text God knows who about the loser she's stuck with. I saw it. I had it. Every photo. Every late night. Thinking about you. Whisper she thought was just between her and whatever ghost she was chasing. That night, as she fell asleep smug in her triumph, I opened my laptop. Typed a single sentence. Proceed. She made it public. Then attached a file. Titled it Pre-Anniversary Revisions. Sent it off. While she dreamed of her ex, I was erasing her future. One clause at a time. The first message hit the group chat less than 20 minutes after we got home. I was still taking off my shoes. He just sat there. Like a loser. Then the kicker. Honestly, it was too easy. I almost felt bad. Almost. 3 laughing emojis. A gif of a bored cat. And a selfie she took under the restaurant chandelier, with me in the background. Blurry, mid-bite. She captioned it, "This man thinks we're still in love." They all laughed. Carol, Lauren, even Marcy, her cousin who once cried on our couch when her boyfriend left her for someone younger. Now she was in on the joke too. I didn't respond, didn't confront, didn't slam a door or throw a glass. I walked past her in the hallway. She didn't even look up from her phone, still chuckling, still scrolling. She called out, mockingly, "Don't worry, Roger. You were a great audience." I stopped only to glance at the thermostat. She always turned it up when she drank. Cheap wine turned her into a sweaty narcissist. I adjusted it back down, calmly, clinically. In my office, I powered on the MacBook Pro she never knew the password to. Not the main one. The other one. The quiet one. The folder was already open. Exit package. Inside, PDF copies of our trust agreement. Timeline spreadsheet tracking every suspicious transaction from the last 18 months. Screenshots of all her mirrored messages. A scanned copy of a prenup she thought had expired, but didn't. And one new document, a revised property distribution clause, marked, "Ready for review" by my lawyer. I typed a brief message. Miles. As discussed, initiate process under the public disparagement clause. Refer to Addendum 3, pages 4 and 7. Upload full documentation to court portal. Confidentiality flag on. Subject, activate. Then I attached the file, titled simply Pre-Anniversary Revisions.pdf. It uploaded fast. My internet never lagged. I hovered a moment before pressing send. There was no satisfaction, no smugness, just a stillness that comes when you realize the person across the hall from you doesn't exist anymore. Denise was still giggling to herself when I passed the kitchen, now on a video call with Lauren, recounting the toast like it was some kind of victory lap. And I said, "You'll never be half the man my ex is. You should have seen his face, Lauren. He looked like a kicked puppy. He actually just thanked me. Can you believe that?" Lauren's voice crackled through the speaker. "Girl, that's iconic. I swear, you should have been on Real Housewives." Did he even flinch? "Nope," Denise said, taking a long sip. "Like a statue. Honestly, I think he's going senile. Makes this easier." She laughed again, harder this time. I stood by the fridge, just long enough to see the reflection of her face in the microwave door. So pleased with herself, so utterly unaware. She didn't know that tonight, she didn't just humiliate a man, she detonated her safety net. The thing about timing is, most people don't realize they're in the trap until it's already snapped shut. By the time she'd finished her third glass, my attorney had already submitted the documents for emergency review. The house she thought we co-owned was now flagged under asset reassessment. The shared account she used to buy her new shoes last week? Frozen by court order. She thought she'd embarrass me in front of friends. What she really did was hand me legal ammunition in front of witnesses. The most powerful trigger isn't rage. It's silence. And I had just pulled it. At 1:17 a.m., her laughter changed. Not the loud, attention-demanding cackle from earlier that evening. This one was quieter. Intimate. The kind she used to reserve for inside jokes and bedroom whispers. I heard it through the wall, not loud, but sharp enough to cut through drywall and dignity. She was lying in bed, legs tangled in the overpriced linen sheets I bought last fall, whispering into her phone like a teenager sneaking past curfew. I didn't need to listen in. I already had a copy. Denise had no idea her iCloud backups were mirrored. I hadn't installed spyware or anything illegal. I'm not stupid. I used a recovery trick an IT buddy showed me after his own divorce scorched his life. Create a secondary iCloud device under the same Apple ID, register it quietly, and let it sync. All legal. All trackable. All hers. Everything she saved, I saw. Every text. Every live photo. Even the ones she deleted seconds later. So I knew when she typed. Guess who I humiliated tonight? I saw the little photo she attached, me, looking down at my creme brulee, the background blurred. She cropped it just enough to cut out her wine glass and her friends' stunned faces. Then the follow-up text. "Wish it were you I came home to," followed by a black heart emoji. The digital version of spit in my face. His name? Jared. That was the J from her botched Venmo transfer months ago. He used to bartend at a resort we stayed at 15 years ago. She ran into him at her friend's yoga retreat last spring, the one she swore didn't even have cell reception. Turns out it did, just not for me. The irony? He's now a landscaping contractor with an ego so inflated you could spot it from space. And she was trying to resurrect their little high school summer romance meets midlife delusion like some sad Lifetime movie. She thought this was power. that mocking me in a private thread made her some kind of femme fatale. But this wasn't seduction. It was evidence. At 1:21 a.m., she sent him another message. You were always better in bed. Even back then. Wish I hadn't settled. I didn't even flinch. Instead, I clicked download on the .zip archive syncing from her cloud to my secured drive. All labeled. All timestamped. All admissible. People think betrayal hurts because of the infidelity. It doesn't. It hurts because of the confidence. The way they act like you'll never know. Like you're too slow, too kind, too old, too blind to catch on. Like your silence equals stupidity. But in my silence, I was archiving. By 2:04 a.m., her entire photo roll had synced, including a shot from last weekend's girls-only trip. The one where she said they stayed in, watched movies, drank tea. Funny, I don't remember her friends having tattoos that say warrior on their hips or hands rough enough to belong to a man who lays brick 5 days a week. There he was, a Jared, shirtless, holding a champagne bottle in the background while Denise posed with a pout. She saved it under the name DSCN_1434. Lazy. Predictable. I forwarded it all to Miles, my attorney. Subject line. Supplemental materials. Disparagement plus adultery threats. No commentary. No emotion. Just data. Back in the bedroom, I heard the buzz of her phone vibrating on the nightstand. She giggled again, this time softer, as she typed another reply. I didn't bother to check it. I didn't need more. The goal wasn't confrontation. It was construction. Brick by digital brick, I was building the wall she'd slam into. She thought she was writing a love story. I was writing the conclusion. And she had just given me the final paragraph. At 3:12 a.m., Denise was snoring softly beside an empty wine glass and an ego freshly polished with delusion. At 3:13, I was logged into the family financial dashboard, quiet, deliberate, no wasted motion. She'd never bothered learning how it worked. That was always Roger's thing. Her talents, as she often reminded dinner guests, were more interpersonal. Translation: she flirted well, remembered birthdays, and could charm any waiter into giving us free dessert. But estate structuring? Tax-shielded investments? That lived in my world. And tonight, that world closed its doors behind her. I started with the joint brokerage account, $500,000 and change. Not bad for a man she called retired and boring. I'd already set up the firewall a year ago, when she first started getting too busy for our Sunday rituals. The trust was dormant back then, just a shell. Tonight, it woke up. The money moved fast, into the Calhoun Heritage Irrevocable Trust. Irrevocable being the key word. Denise's name wasn't anywhere near it. Never had been. Calhoun. That's my mother's maiden name. I even used it on the paperwork just in case she ever sniffed around. By 3/26, the trust owned the brokerage account, the post-retirement real estate fund, my pension rollover, and a little bonus, the residuals from a patent I'd sold back in '09. Small but poetic. Next, the house. She thought it was ours. Laughed once about putting up her Pilates certificate in the guest room like it meant something. But the title? That hadn't been in our names for over 4 years. Back when my niece graduated law school, we formed a holding company, Pinewheel Capital, LLC. I told Denise it was a tax write-off for her internship. She bought it. Hook, line, and Chardonnay. In reality, Pinewheel bought our house. Cash. Quietly. I still paid the property taxes, still did the yard work, still repaired the gutters. But legally, we were tenants. With a month-to-month agreement. The only difference between a landlord and a husband is paperwork. And I had plenty. By 3/41, I'd filed a notice of reorganization with the county clerk, routine, automatic. But it ensured that in any asset audit, Denise's name would appear nowhere. Her contribution to the property had been a Pinterest board and a very aggressive argument over backsplash tiles. 3/49, I opened the secondary checking account, one I hadn't touched in months, seeded long ago for a rainy day. That day had arrived. I moved the remaining joint funds, $87,492.14. Clean sweep. Denise had always insisted on using a black Amex with her name on it. Image over access. The joint card, however, the one connected to actual money, she hadn't swiped it since Easter. That worked out nicely. By 4 o'clock, I'd rerouted the mailing address for all statements to a P.O. box registered to the trust. I even updated the online profile image. Something new. Something symbolic. A raven. Not because I'm superstitious, but because I like the idea of a bird that waits, watches, and never forgets. I closed the laptop, poured myself a glass of water. She stirred in bed, rolled over, mumbled something like, "NGH, thermostat's broken again," then curled back into sleep. "No, sweetheart. The thermostat works just fine. You're the one who's frozen." Tomorrow she'd wake up thinking she still had options, still had leverage, still had some version of me on standby, waiting for her tantrum to pass. But tonight, I became untouchable. While she dreamed about Jared's compliments and her next Instagram caption, I'd locked every exit behind her. The audit wasn't just cold. It was surgical. I woke up at 9:43 a.m., a luxury I hadn't allowed myself in years. Sunlight was already pushing through the blinds, slicing across the hardwood floor like quiet applause. I stretched, yawned, and padded into the kitchen. French press. Kenyan roast. Quiet hum of the refrigerator. I didn't rush. Let the world scream. I'd built this moment to be silent. When I finally reached for my phone, the screen lit up like a Christmas tree strapped to a panic attack. 255 missed calls. Denise. Her sister. A number I didn't recognize. One listed as Yoga Susan. Another with no ID, probably Jared doing his best impression of someone who still mattered. And the voicemails. God. The voicemails. First one. Denise. Screaming. Not dramatic crying, this was feral. Why is my card declined? I'm at the damn gas station and this idiot is holding my wallet. Roger. Call me right now. She was breathing like she'd run a marathon fueled by entitlement and espresso shots. Next message. Her sister, Cynthia. Fake sweet, but on edge. Roger. I don't know what's going on, but Denise is hysterical. She said your house, is locked? Changed locks? Are you okay? I'm sure this is just a misunderstanding. Ah, that word again. Misunderstanding. Like adultery's just bad communication. The third one was my favorite. Jared's number. Short. Clipped. Hey man. Not sure what's happening, but Denise is really upset. Thought maybe we could talk. Click. I didn't even finish it. I let the voicemail delete itself like it wasn't even worth storing. Meanwhile, texts were coming in like popcorn kernels under pressure. Roger, this isn't funny. Are you seriously freezing me out? The mortgage company said the account name changed. Where is our money? What did you do? Each message more frantic than the last. But what caught my eye wasn't the screaming. It was the timestamps. Her first attempt had been at 7:12 a.m., right after she tried to buy coffee. Her Amex declined. She thought it was a glitch. Then her debit card failed at the gas station. By 7:30, she was at her sister's house, using Cynthia's phone to try my number again and again. By 8:15, she called the bank. By 8:27, the words, "unauthorized account modification" probably left her lips for the first time. And by 8:59, she called her lawyer. I know, because the bank's fraud department called me for verification at 9:01, just as I was pouring my second cup of coffee. I confirmed everything. I wasn't hiding. I was reorganizing. By 10:06, the last voicemail came in. Denise again. Quieter this time, but more dangerous. If you don't call me back, I swear to God, I will make this ugly. I will ruin you, Roger. You think you're smart? You think you're the victim here? No, Denise. I was the victim. Past tense. Now, I'm just the man holding the receipts. She tried calling one more time as I opened my news app. I declined the call mid-ring. Let her stew in the rejection. Let her sit in that echo chamber where she always assumed I was the lesser man. She still hadn't figured out that her power had been rented, leased through my goodwill, financed by my patience, and I'd repossessed every inch of it. While she panicked, I took a sip of hot coffee. Calm, steady, clean. Sometimes revenge doesn't require shouting. Sometimes it just requires not picking up the phone. By 11:02 a.m., Denise was on the road, driving like a woman possessed, wearing sunglasses that didn't hide the mascara streak down her cheekbones. The phone was on speaker, bouncing between her lap and the center console, still calling me every 5 minutes like repetition could summon control. Traffic lights blurred. Horns honked. She didn't notice. All she knew was that her name no longer worked at the bank. Her cards were dead, and the mortgage company had said something about corporate restructuring. Her reality had started bleeding at the edges. She needed an anchor. She needed the house. The place with the rose bushes she pretended to water for Instagram. The kitchen where she burned soup but filmed herself plating takeout like a gourmet chef. The upstairs bathroom with the mirror she called her truth teller because, in her words, it made her look younger than Roger deserves. That house was more than walls to her. It was her stage. So when she pulled into the driveway at 11:49 a.m., she expected to step back into her kingdom. To stomp up the stairs, find me brooding in the den, and start her monologue about what I'd really meant by all this. Maybe even cry. She was good at tears when cornered. But the house didn't greet her. The keypad glared red. Her key didn't fit. She tried again. Harder. Jammed it like force could negotiate. Then moved to the side door. Same result. Even the garage had a new panel. The panic rose faster this time. Not the controlled chaos of morning bank calls. This was raw, primal confusion. She pounded on the door with her palm, then with both fists, shouting now. Roger, open the damn door. What the hell is this? Nothing. The house was still. She pressed her face to the window by the dining room, shielding her eyes from the glare. That's when it hit her. The chandelier, the one she insisted we install for ambience, gone. The dining table replaced by something sleek, modern. Glass and chrome instead of reclaimed wood. No trace of the beige runner she bought from that overpriced boutique. No framed wedding photo on the shelf. And the worst part? Shoes by the door. Not mine. Not hers. New ones. Women's. Size 7, maybe. Black flats, neatly aligned on a mat she didn't buy. Her face went pale. She ran around to the back patio, tried to slide open the door she used to leave ajar for fresh air. It didn't budge. She rattled it, stomped, screamed. A voice called out from across the street. Denise. She turned. It was Harold. Retired, widowed, and nosy as hell. Always trimming his hedges like the yard was a battleground. I thought you moved out last week, he said, blinking. Didn't know you were coming back. She stared at him, blinking like she'd just been slapped. What are you talking about? He scratched his chin, oblivious. That younger woman, the one with the curly hair, she moved in last Thursday, right? Thought it was your niece or something. I said hello. She said she was the new tenant. Place looks great, by the way. Tenant? Tenant? Her head spun. She turned back to the house. The mat at the door no longer said welcome. It said live deliberately. A new life had started in her house. Denise stood frozen for a full 30 seconds before she grabbed her phone again. No missed calls. No new messages. She typed, fast, thumb shaking. Roger. We need to talk. This isn't funny anymore. Did you rent the house? Sell it? I have rights. You can't do this. I will call a lawyer. I will. But I'd already seen it. The text synced to the archive folder in real time, landing next to last night's flirty whispers and this morning's meltdown. She tried calling again. Straight to voicemail. And across town, I sat in a downtown cafe, sipping espresso, reading the lease agreement my niece had drafted. 12-month term. Paid in full. Tenant, Claire Harper. My niece. Law degree, excellent credit, no tolerance for drama. The house hadn't vanished. It had simply moved on. And Denise? She was locked outside of a life she thought she could humiliate and still own. The doorbell rang at exactly 3:06 p.m. Cynthia opened it, still in her robe, annoyed. She was halfway through her second mimosa and didn't appreciate surprises, especially not from couriers holding clipboards. Signature required. The man said, emotionless. Brown uniform, clean clipboard, envelope thick enough to slap. No return address. For Denise R. That's my sister, Cynthia cut in. She's. I'll wait, he said, already raising the stylus. Denise came stomping down the hallway, barefoot, phone still in hand from her 50th unanswered call to me. Her hair was a mess, eyeliner smudged into war paint. She looked like she'd just run a marathon through legal ambiguity. She signed without reading. Assumed it was a lawyer, or the bank, or maybe even a pathetic apology letter from me with flowers stuffed inside like I used to do when we were 25 and still believed in soft landings. Instead, she opened the envelope and pulled out the first document. Marriage nullification via trust dissolution. Not a divorce filing. Not a request. A declaration. Full summary. Neutral tone. Deadly consequences. The trust that shielded every asset was formally, irrevocably severed from her. No appeal. No negotiation. The second page. Court notification. Transfer of ownership validated. Stamped. Signed. Official. The house she just got locked out of? Never hers. The bank had acknowledged the full transfer. And the new tenant, Claire Harper, was fully legal, fully paid. Denise had as much standing as a raccoon on the front porch. The third page, a still image, low-res, cropped, but unmistakable. Her phone screen, message bubble. Guess who I humiliated tonight? Under it, my face, bored, chewing steak, unaware she was staging a photo for the man she'd been mentally undressing all year. The ex she swore was a lesson, not a person. Denise stared at it, color draining from her skin like someone had pulled the plug. Then she reached the final piece. A handwritten note, single sentence. Centered. This wasn't about him. This was about you not seeing me. No signature. No threat. No closing flourish. Just that. The world didn't end in screaming. It ended in silence. She sat down on the couch without saying a word. Cynthia asked, "What is it?" Once, maybe twice. No answer. Denise just stared at the note like it had hit her with more force than any courtroom ever could. It hadn't just told her she lost. It told her why. She'd always believed humiliation was a power move. Something to toss out like confetti while I stood beneath it, smiling through gritted teeth. But this was calculated, choreographed, clean. And for once, there was no one to perform for. No audience. No laughing group chat. Just a couch, a courier slip, and a truth she couldn't twist. This wasn't about her ex. It was about her blind spot. Me. She arrived late. Of course. Wearing oversized sunglasses that didn't match her outfit and a wrinkled blouse that looked like it had been pulled from the floor of her sister's guest room. Her hair, usually styled within an inch of its life, hung limp around her shoulders. Her posture screamed defiance, but her hands betrayed her. Fidgeting, gripping the purse strap like it could anchor her to some version of reality that hadn't already dissolved. The cafe was neutral territory. Mid-tier, midtown. Clean, beige, boring. No memories. No nostalgia. Just quiet jazz and the whir of a decent espresso machine. I was already seated. Black coffee. No cream. No sugar. Just the taste of finality. She spotted me, adjusted her glasses like armor, and walked over with the kind of fake composure that burns calories. She didn't say hello. Didn't sit right away. "I have no idea what this is supposed to prove," she snapped, arms crossed. "You think playing some weird lawyer card game makes you look strong? It makes you look petty." I sipped my coffee, set it down, then slid the folder across the table with 2 fingers, calm, surgical, silent. She didn't touch it, just stared. "You said I'm not half the man your ex is," I said, voice low. "Good news, he gets half the blame too." Her mouth opened, closed, opened again. "What is this?" "Documentation," I said, "in case you needed help remembering who played what role." She finally opened it. First page, a bank transaction timeline. Not mine, hers. Tagged purchases, hotel stays, withdrawals in odd cities. Timestamps cross-referenced with photos she'd sent me from supposedly different places. Second page, GPS pings. Her phone, her car. Location histories pulled legally, linked through a shared auto insurance login she never bothered to update. She always said I was too old school to know tech. Turns out I was just quiet. Third page, photos. Private investigator, 6 weeks worth. Denise kissing Jared in the parking lot of a Holiday Inn Express, 2 hours before she told me her friend had a wellness emergency. Another shot. Her checking into a lakeside Airbnb that had 1 bed, not 2. Timestamped. She flipped faster now, hands shaking, still trying to find the one page that would explain it away. Reframe the narrative. Reclaim the spotlight. Instead, she hit the final section, her own texts, printed and highlighted. "You were always better in bed. I wish it was you I came home to." Roger just sat there. What a joke. I watched the moment it clicked. Not just that I knew, but that I planned to know. That I hadn't stumbled into this. I had built it. This is low, she muttered, pushing the folder away like it might bite her. No, Denise, I said. You went low? I just kept the receipts. She blinked fast, voice tighter now. You could have come to me. We could have talked about this like adults. Worked through it. I mean, Christ, Roger, we have history. I leaned in, smiling just enough to sting. You had a choice, partnership or performance. You chose the stage. This is your closing act. She sat back, folding her arms. So what now? You want an apology? A confession? I took one last sip of coffee. No, I said. I want exactly what I already got. Peace. She didn't get up. She didn't scream. For the first time in weeks, maybe months, Denise was completely still. The weight of the folder on the table seemed to grow, each page an anvil. As I stood to leave, I paused behind her chair. I let you play your game, I said quietly. Now I'm just cashing in the score. And then I walked out. No final jab. No lingering look. Just silence. And her, alone at the table, holding the evidence that her show was over. The email came at 8:03 a.m. sharp. Subject line: Mandatory appearance, confidential mediation review. From a law office she didn't recognize, addressed formally. No dramatic threats, no caps lock, no ultimatums. Just a date, a time, and an address uptown. Professional. Surgical. Denise forwarded it to Cynthia with, "He's pulling one of his legal mind games again, face with rolling eyes, whatever. I'll show up and shut it down." She showed up in heels too tall for confidence and makeup too thick for mourning. She walked into the building like she was still the protagonist, still the woman who could spin a narrative if she just spoke fast enough. The receptionist offered a glass of water. She declined. She always did. Admitting thirst was, in her mind, a kind of weakness. A tall, stone-faced man in a charcoal suit opened the door to the meeting room. "Ms. R, this way." The room was cold. One long table, 3 chairs. A flat screen on the wall already playing, muted. She froze mid-step. On screen, a still from the restaurant. Her face twisted mid-toast, eyes glinting with cruelty, wine glass raised. Then video. Her voice. Crystal clear. "You'll never be half the man my ex is." Laughter. Hers. Louder than she remembered. Roger, calmly chewing. Still. Unmoved. She blinked rapidly, as if that could turn it off. "Is this some dramatic little project?" she snapped. "Did he hire a filmmaker for this?" The lawyer said nothing. The screen changed. Footage from a hotel lobby. Her checking in with Jared. Wearing yoga leggings and oversized sunglasses. Her hand resting on his chest at the reception desk. Next, them in the hotel bar. Clinking glasses. His hand on her thigh. Then a cabin porch. Denise curled in his lap. Laughing. Shirt half off. Camera angle low. Far off. Long lens. She stepped back. Instinctive. Primitive. That's a violation," she stammered. The lawyer, still silent, clicked a remote. Paused the video. The screen froze on her kissing Jared outside a rental car. "I believe," he said calmly, "you referred to these as your weekends with friends." Denise's knees almost buckled. She caught the chair and dropped into it. "No one was supposed to see that," she whispered. "We have bank statements, text logs, hotel bookings. All admissible," the lawyer continued, sliding a folder toward her. "You've publicly disparaged your husband in front of multiple witnesses. You've committed ongoing adultery. You've used joint assets to fund those activities." She didn't respond. Her mascara was cracking now, betraying the shock she was trying so hard to suppress. "And," he said, flipping to the final document, "you breached the moral behavior clause in your prenup, an agreement that, I must clarify, never expired." Denise looked up, lip trembling. "You're bluffing. He wouldn't go public." He's not like that." The lawyer held her gaze. "I'm not here to convince you he would. I'm here to ask if you'd prefer he didn't." Silence. Then he reached into a briefcase and pulled out a pen. "These are the terms. You waive any claims to the house. No spousal support. You retain your car, your personal belongings, and a modest severance payment from the trust, signed, not negotiated." She stared down at the folder. Her own name printed in cold font above the words "waiver of entitlement." Her voice cracked when she spoke. "He really filmed everything?" The lawyer didn't answer. He didn't have to. The screen behind him spoke for itself. Her past, projected. Her lies, documented. Her performances, finally seen, without the filter, without the edits. And there she was. Not the woman she tried to be, but the woman she was. And all it took was pressing play. The courthouse lobby smelled like polish and cold air conditioning, sterile, unfeeling, like the place had forgotten what empathy even looked like. Roger stood by the marble column near the exit, calm in a tailored gray jacket, hands loosely folded in front of him. No tie, no briefcase, just one envelope in his hand, cream-colored, heavy stock paper. His face was unreadable, not cold, not cruel, just done. Denise came rushing in like a storm that had run out of wind. Her heels clacked against the stone floor, loud in the silence. She wore black like she was mourning something, but whether it was her marriage or her image, no one could say. Her mascara, applied too carefully, was already smudging at the corners. Her lips trembled from something that wasn't cold. "Roger, wait," she said, half breathless. Can we just talk for 1 second?" He didn't flinch, didn't move toward her, just looked at her like someone examining a house that had already burned down. I didn't think you'd go through with all this. I thought we could. We've been through worse, haven't we?" Her voice cracked like ice under weight. He held out the envelope. Said nothing. She hesitated, then took it with both hands like it might explode. It didn't. It just sat there quiet, final, heavier than it looked. "I didn't mean it the way it sounded that night," she said quickly, rambling now. "The thing I said about Jared, it was stupid. I was drunk. And angry. And Roger finally spoke. Calm. Measured. "I see. You said I'm not half the man your ex is." Denise's face crumpled, eyes glassy. She nodded, once. Silent tears now. Raw regret twisted with the realization that nothing she said was going to rewind the last few months. He leaned in slightly, close enough for her to smell the faint scent of black coffee and something like finality. "Turns out," he said softly, "you're not even half the woman I thought you were." Then he turned and walked toward the exit. No yelling, no guilt tripping, no threats of what comes next. Just the sound of his shoes tapping once, twice, then fading into quiet as the heavy doors opened. Denise stood in the center of the lobby, envelope still in hand, shaking as families and lawyers and strangers passed by, no one stopping, no one seeing her the way she needed to be seen. Inside the envelope was no letter, no parting words, just a single printed page. Finalized agreement. Signed. Filed. Executed. And below that, a small printed quote, faint in gray ink. Some endings aren't loud. They're clean. And for the first time in her life, Denise realized silence could be louder than any revenge.
"I noticed the watch before I noticed the lie. Jennifer never wore a watch. Not once in our 12 years of marriage. She hated anything on her wrists. Said it made her feel restricted. I remember, years ago, I bought her a sleek little smartwatch, thinking it'd help her keep track of her runs. She smiled, thanked me, then left it on the dresser until the battery died. That was Jennifer. And yet, tonight, at our baby shower, there it was, a shining, unmistakably expensive wristwatch hugging her left arm. A men's model, thick-banded, elegant but understated. Something that didn't scream wealth but whispered it. I noticed it when she reached for a glass of sparkling water, her fingers curling around the stem, as if the watch had always been a part of her. I asked, casually, "New watch?" She barely glanced at me. "Oh, this? It was a gift from the girls." From the girls. That was Jennifer speak for her little clique. Emily, Lisa, and Rachel. The same three who had just been giggling over something across the room, throwing her knowing glances between sips of their overpriced cocktails. I looked over at them. Lisa caught my gaze and smirked. Not a friendly smirk. The kind of smirk a person gives when they know something you don't. That was the moment the first crack formed. I let it go. For the moment, the party was still going. People were laughing, and Thomas, our 15-year-old, was tugging on my sleeve, eager to tell me something. I leaned down, expecting some inside joke or another ridiculous meme, but he only whispered, "Mom's phone was open. You need to see this." I didn't react. Years of marriage had taught me to keep a straight face, but my pulse pounded in my ears. "Later," I murmured. He hesitated, eyes flicking toward his mother. She was across the room, smiling, radiant, every bit the glowing mother-to-be. But Thomas had my instincts. He felt something was off. Finally, he nodded and backed away. I didn't wait long. As soon as Jennifer was wrapped up in conversation, I slipped into our bedroom. Her purse sat on the nightstand, open just enough for me to spot her leather-bound planner. Jennifer, for all her digital habits, still swore by handwritten notes. She said writing things down made them more real. I flipped through the pages quickly, my fingers steady, my breath measured, and then I saw it. A neat little entry, penned in her precise, elegant handwriting. Session, relaxation therapy. Time, a date, and an address. The address of a private medical clinic. One that specialized in DNA testing. A slow, creeping chill crawled up my spine. Relaxation therapy, right? I took out my phone and snapped a picture of the entry, my heart hammering in my chest. I should have stopped there. I should have walked out, let it simmer, thought it through. But then my eyes landed on her nightstand, where she always placed her wedding ring before bed. Except tonight, her ring wasn't there, but the watch was. And as I lifted it, tilting it under the soft glow of the bedside lamp, something caught my eye. A tiny engraving on the back, a serial number, and beneath it, 2 initials. Not mine. I should have walked away. I should have confronted her the moment I saw the initials on that damn watch. But something held me back. Some dark, festering need for certainty. So instead of exploding, I played it smart. I let the doubt simmer beneath my skin, let it coil into something sharp and calculating. Then the universe did me a favor. It was 2 nights after the baby shower. Jennifer had taken her car to a late prenatal yoga class. Another one of her little rituals. I was supposed to be home, but Thomas needed a ride back from his friend's house. I took Jennifer's car closer, easier. Thomas slid into the passenger seat, immediately pulling out his phone. Thanks, Dad. No problem. I adjusted the seat, sighing. The car still had that new leather smell, that pristine feel, because Jennifer had been meticulous about keeping it spotless. But as I went to start the engine, my hand brushed against something on the center console. A small, blinking light. The car's voice assistant had been activated. And then, a voice. Jennifer's voice. We have to keep this a secret until after the birth. My breath stopped. Thomas looked up from his phone. What was that? I couldn't answer. The words echoed in the silent car, crackling slightly like they had been recorded during a call. My hands were frozen on the wheel. Then, as if mocking me, the assistant chimed again. Would you like to continue playback? For a moment, neither of us moved. My brain scrambled for an explanation. Maybe it was some pregnancy-related thing, a surprise she was planning, something innocent. But deep down, I already knew. Thomas glanced at me. His face had that teenage mix of confusion and reluctant understanding, like he wanted to believe in his mother but also knew that something was wrong. I reached for the button. Yes. The car filled with voices. It's risky, I know, but we don't have a choice. If he finds out now, everything falls apart. A man's voice responded, too muffled to recognize, but the tone was clear, urgent, secretive. Just hold on a little longer. Once the baby is here, we'll figure everything out. I felt my pulse in my throat. My vision narrowed. Thomas was staring at me now, his phone forgotten in his lap. He won't suspect a thing, Jennifer's voice reassured. He never has before. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. My grip on the steering wheel tightened so hard my knuckles turned white. Never has before. Never has before. Like this wasn't the first time. Like this wasn't a mistake or a moment of weakness, but something woven into the fabric of our marriage. I forced my breathing to steady. My thoughts, however, were anything but steady, because Jennifer had no idea that our entire house, our smart home, the one I set up myself, was synced to a private server. Every connected device, every audio input, and this car was connected too. I pressed another button, my voice cold, controlled. Save audio to home server. A soft chime confirmed the upload. Jennifer had spent years treating me like a fool, like I was blind. She had no idea that, for the first time in our marriage, I was finally seeing her for who she really was. I didn't sleep that night. I lay next to Jennifer, listening to the slow, even breaths of a woman who had no idea that her carefully constructed world was already crumbling. My mind was a storm, replaying that damn recording, hearing her voice drip with quiet confidence. He won't suspect a thing. She thought I was blind, thought I was stupid. By morning, I was done feeling. No more shock, no more pain. Just an icy, focused resolve. I needed more. Jennifer, like most people who think they're clever, had one fatal flaw. She trusted technology just enough to be reckless with it. I knew she used cloud storage for her photos, syncing them automatically to keep her precious memories safe. I also knew she occasionally deleted things in a panic, assuming they were gone forever. She forgot one thing. I was the one who set up our accounts. I had access to the admin panel. So while she showered, I sat at my desk, logged in, and scrolled through the recovery folder. And there they were, dozens of images. I clicked on the first one. A beach. Not the kind of overpopulated, tourist trap beach. No, this was somewhere secluded. The sand too white, the water too perfect. Place meant for secrets. Then I saw her, Jennifer, standing on a wooden pier, a breeze catching her hair just right. She looked beautiful, radiant even, and unmistakably pregnant. Much more pregnant than she should have been. I clenched my jaw, my pulse steady, cold. The official timeline she fed me, the one I stupidly believed, had her at barely 3 months along when these photos were taken. But in this picture, she was showing. I clicked again. Another image. This time she wasn't alone. A shadow stretched across the sand, reaching toward her. My stomach tightened. Another click. And then there he was. A man, half turned away from the camera, standing just behind her. He wasn't touching her, but he might as well have been. The way he stood, the way she leaned slightly in his direction. Familiar. Comfortable. His shirt caught my eye. White, crisp, with a small embroidered logo on the pocket. I zoomed in. A company logo. Jennifer's company. I closed my eyes for a second, inhaling slowly through my nose. Geotags. The metadata attached to the photos told me everything I needed to know. They were taken during one of Jennifer's supposed work trips. The same trip where she claimed to be swamped with meetings, too busy to even FaceTime me before bed. I pulled up my phone, cross-referencing the location with her company's travel logs, the ones she conveniently left open on her work laptop at home. Bingo. Her lover was there at the same time. Everything lined up too perfectly. The pregnancy, the secrecy, the damn beach trip that never existed in my reality but was very, very real in hers. I should have seen it before, but I wasn't that man anymore. I glanced over my shoulder. The shower was still running. Good. I transferred the recovered photos to a secure drive and erased any trace that I had ever been there. Jennifer thought she was playing me. She had no idea I had just flipped the board. The pictures should have been enough. The recordings should have been enough. But I wasn't in this for just confirmation anymore. I was in it for the full truth. Every detail. Every deception. I wanted to know the depth of the betrayal before I burned everything to the ground. And Jennifer, bless her heart, made it easy. She had a fitness tracker. A high-end model, one of those sleek, overpriced ones that measured everything: heart rate, sleep patterns, even blood oxygen levels. She got it a year ago during one of her wellness kicks. She never took it off. That meant it logged everything. And since she used my email for the family subscription plan, I had access. She just never thought I'd look. I sat at my desk opening the app. Jennifer's profile loaded instantly, her latest stats glowing on the screen. Steps taken, calories burned, sleep quality. But I wasn't interested in that. I went straight to the GPS logs. Her usual movements were predictable: work, home, the occasional yoga class. But then I saw it. Pattern. Every few weeks, she had long gaps of missing data late at night. Not a single recorded step between midnight and 4 a.m. Almost like she took the watch off. But one night she forgot. 2 weeks ago. 3:12 a.m. A long walk. Through a park. Park that, at that hour, should have been empty. I clicked on the route map, following the red line of her movements. She didn't just stroll around. She entered through the east gate, walked in a slow, winding pattern, then stopped for nearly 40 minutes by a bench near the center. I zoomed in, and then she left. Not back the way she came. She exited on the far side, onto a street lined with quiet suburban homes. One address in particular stood out, a name I recognized. It wasn't random. It wasn't a scenic night walk. It was him. My skin prickled. I leaned back in my chair, exhaling slowly, forcing the anger down. This wasn't just an affair. This wasn't some fling. This was calculated, thought out, scheduled, and I had proof. Now I just needed to see it for myself. I opened another tab, logged into my city's public surveillance system, the same one I used to contest a parking ticket last year. Found the park, scrolled through the timestamps. 3:12 a.m. A lone figure entered. Jennifer. 3:16 a.m. Another figure approached. A man. Not fully visible, but I didn't need his face. His build. His posture. It was him. They sat together on the bench. Close. Too close. Then, 40 minutes later, they walked off into the night. Together. To his house. I didn't look away from the screen. I just let it all settle. Let it root itself deep inside me. I wasn't disgusted anymore. I was done feeling anything but cold, razor-sharp focus. Jennifer thought she was careful. She had no idea how much of her life I was about to dismantle. I wasn't even looking for it. By this point, I had stopped expecting things to just fall into my lap. I had been deliberate, methodical, digging through her digital footprints, tracking her movements, piecing together the truth one shard at a time. But this was sheer, stupid luck. Or maybe fate. I was in the garage, taking out the trash. My hands moved on autopilot, bag out, new liner in, until something caught my eye. A folded sheet of paper, thick, official-looking, wedged between discarded junk mail and an empty protein bar wrapper. Jennifer never left paper receipts. She was all about digital transactions, emailed invoices, Apple Pay. Which meant whatever this was, she didn't want it showing up in a bank statement. I pulled it out, unfolded it, and felt the breath leave my body. It was a payment confirmation, a wire transfer, to a private medical clinic. For a genetic analysis. The amount wasn't pocket change. 5 figures. More than enough to suggest this wasn't some routine prenatal screening. My hands tightened around the paper. I read it again, twice. There was no patient name listed, just Jennifer's billing details and a vague description of services rendered. But I didn't need a name, because there was only one reason a married woman, pregnant with her husband's supposed child, would secretly wire that kind of money to a genetics lab. My stomach twisted. I turned, gripping the edge of the workbench, steadying myself. For the first time since this whole thing started unraveling, I felt something close to helplessness. What if I had been living a lie even before this affair? What if my whole damn marriage had been a carefully managed illusion? I squeezed my eyes shut. No more spiraling. No more emotion. I needed to act. I grabbed my phone and took a picture of the receipt, then ran a reverse search on the clinic. It was a high-end facility, the kind that didn't advertise services to just anyone. But buried in the depths of an old legal case, I found a leaked patient form. One line stood out. Parental DNA confirmation services available upon request. Paternity test. Jennifer hadn't just been cheating. She had been checking to see if this baby, the baby we were celebrating, the baby whose nursery I had painted, was mine. And she hadn't told me. I forced my breathing to slow. She wanted answers? Fine. I'd give her some. I spent the next 2 hours creating a fake email, spoofed to look like it came from the clinic. A professional, polished report, complete with the same formatting and headers I had found in sample documents online. Then I sent it to him, her lover. Subject line, urgent. DNA test results. The fake report attached. The contents? A carefully crafted confirmation that the child was his. And now, I just had to wait. Wait for the panic. Wait for the cracks to spread. Wait for Jennifer's whole damn world to collapse. I didn't wait long. By the next morning, Jennifer was acting strange. Distracted. She kept checking her phone, her fingers tapping erratically against the screen. Her eyes flicked toward me every now and then, gauging, watching. She knew something was off, because he had gotten the email, because he had seen the results. And now they were scrambling. I played my part. I kissed her goodbye, told her I'd pick up dinner, asked if she wanted anything special. She smiled too quickly, shook her head, and practically bolted out the door. Perfect. As soon as she was gone, I went to work. Jennifer wasn't careless with her phone, but she was predictable. Every time she downloaded a new app, She let autofill save her login details. It was a habit, one she probably didn't even think about, and I had spent the last few years managing our family security, which meant I had access to every device on our network. That included her phone, the weak link, her messaging app. I created a fake update notification designed to look like a routine security patch, a simple phishing trick. When she clicked it, it redirected her to a cloned login page. She entered her credentials without a second thought. And just like that, I had them. I logged into her account from my laptop, hands steady, pulse slow. The chat history was there, untouched, waiting for me. I scrolled, and then I saw it. Their messages stretched back months. Conversations littered with inside jokes and pet names. The kind of intimacy that doesn't just happen overnight. But it was the most recent messages that sent a slow, creeping numbness through my limbs. Him. I still can't believe he doesn't know. After all this time. Jennifer, he never asks questions. He trusts me. Him. That's why this worked so well. And soon, we won't have to hide anything anymore. Jennifer, not long now. Just until the baby's here. Then, the one that made my vision tunnel. Him. I can't wait to be a real family with you and our son. Our son. Not her son. Not the baby. Ours. I stared at the words, my mind oddly quiet. There it was. The truth. Naked and undeniable. They had a plan. A timeline. And I was just a temporary obstacle. Jennifer wasn't waiting for the baby to be born out of guilt or fear. She was waiting because she needed me to be useful a little longer. Once the baby arrived, she'd be gone. She had it all mapped out. The slow, inevitable divorce. The narrative of an unhappy marriage. The gradual transition into a new happy life with him. I exhaled slowly, closed the laptop. For the first time since this started, I wasn't angry. I wasn't heartbroken. I wasn't anything. Just cold. Cold and ready. She thought she had a plan? She had no idea that I had just rewritten the ending. Jennifer's arrogance had always been her greatest weakness. She thought she was careful. Thought she covered her tracks. Thought I was still that trusting husband who never asked questions, who never looked deeper. But she underestimated technology. And she sure as hell underestimated me. I had been tracking her movements for weeks, gathering proof, collecting every breadcrumb she carelessly dropped. But now I needed something undeniable. Something that wouldn't just expose her but bury her. That's when I thought about her smartwatch. It was always on her wrist, constantly listening, constantly recording tiny biometric data, her heart rate, her stress levels, even the times she moved in her sleep. But most importantly, it had a built-in microphone for voice commands. A microphone that synced with her phone. A microphone I could access. It took less than an hour to install the Silent app on her phone. A background process disguised as a standard health update. It activated the mic whenever she spoke near her watch and automatically uploaded the recordings to a cloud storage drive. Then I waited. She had a doctor's appointment that afternoon. A routine checkup for the pregnancy. She didn't even notice when she lifted her wrist to take a call in the waiting room. Didn't notice when the smartwatch's tiny mic activated, capturing everything. That night, after she fell asleep, I retrieved the file. I plugged in my headphones, hit play, and I listened. The recording started with pleasantries. The doctor, polite. Jennifer, relaxed. Everything sounded normal. Until it didn't. "How's everything looking?" she asked, casual. "Healthy," the doctor confirmed. "No concerns at all. You're measuring a little ahead of schedule. But that's to be expected, considering your conception date. Right?" A pause. Then, Jennifer's voice dropped slightly. "Just to confirm, my husband doesn't need to know about that, does he?" I stopped breathing. "About the dates?" The doctor sounded confused. "Yes, about when exactly the conception happened. He assumes it was after we got back from our trip." But, another pause. Then Jennifer laughed softly. "Some things are better left undiscovered." A cold, creeping numbness spread through my limbs. I let the words sink in, let them settle deep into the part of my brain that used to love this woman. Then, I ran the file through an AI transcription service, extracting every word, every syllable. The software cleaned up the background noise, making Jennifer's voice crisp, undeniable. I saved the transcript, downloaded the original audio. Then I forwarded it to him. No subject line, no explanation, just raw, undeniable truth. And now I waited for the explosion. By now, Jennifer's world had cracks running through it. The carefully crafted illusion of her perfect life was unraveling thread by thread, and she didn't even realize it yet. But he would. Her lover. The man who thought he had won. It was time to make him bleed. I created the account in less than an hour. A simple, believable persona. A woman, single, attractive but not overly polished. Someone who looked real. I pulled photos from an old inactive profile, adjusted minor details, and set up a fake LinkedIn to match. Then I waited. It didn't take long. A couple of mutual industry connections, a casual follow, a few harmless comments under his posts. He noticed. He responded. Soon we were messaging. He was cautious at first. Predictable. But I played the part well, flirty but subtle, interested but not too eager. Just enough to make him feel like he was the one in control. Then I baited the hook. You seem different from the guys I usually talk to. More grounded. Family-oriented. A classic line. The kind of thing a man like him wants to believe about himself. And he took it. I try to be, he replied. Family is everything to me. I nearly laughed. Then, as if to prove it, he did exactly what I wanted. He sent a picture. A photo of Jennifer. Pregnant Jennifer. Smiling. Holding her belly in some intimate, stolen moment. And beside her, his hand rested on her stomach. Like he was the father. Like he was the one building a life with her. That's when I knew. He wasn't just some idiot having an affair. He believed this was his family now. I stared at the image for a long moment, feeling nothing but cold, simmering disgust. Then I got to work. Deepfake technology had come a long way. With enough source material, his social media videos, corporate interviews, even an old wedding toast I found on YouTube, I had everything I needed. Took a few hours, but when I was done, the result was flawless. Fake video of him, sitting in what looked like a police interrogation room, looking just panicked enough. His voice, perfectly synthesized, spilling out a confession. I lied. I manipulated her. I falsified documents to take money from the company. I never loved her. I just saw an opportunity and took it. And the baby? It's not mine. It was subtle. Just enough detail to sound real, but vague enough to let people's imaginations run wild. I uploaded it to an anonymous burner account, scheduled it to drop at exactly the right moment. And then, I sent the final message from my fake profile. I know what kind of man you really are. Enjoy the fallout. Now I just had to wait. Because when the video hit, when his colleagues, his family, and Jennifer saw it, his perfect little world would burn. And I would be standing in the ashes, watching. The party was supposed to be a celebration. A bright, cheerful event filled with laughter, cake, and balloons. Family and friends gathered, toasting to Jennifer and the baby. She glowed, radiant in her carefully chosen maternity dress, playing the part of the devoted wife and expectant mother. It was almost impressive. If I didn't already know what she really was, I played along, smiling, chatting, watching. But the real show was about to start. Thomas was the one who pulled me aside. My son, my sharp, observant, no-bullshit son, who had been watching his mother with the same quiet suspicion I had. Dad. His voice was low, urgent. I turned, lowering my drink. Yeah. He glanced around, making sure no one was close, then held out his phone. A single notification glowed on the screen. A message preview. From an unknown number. Love, tomorrow everything changes. Our little one will finally be with just us. My entire body went cold. What the hell is this? I asked, my voice sharper than I intended. I don't know, Thomas said, eyes flicking up to mine. It popped up when I was setting up Mom's new iPad. I think it pulled messages from her backup. My mind raced. I cloud sync. She must have linked her devices, assuming it was safe, assuming no one would ever check. But she forgot about family sharing. Forgot that all her backups were accessible from the same cloud. And Thomas, being a tech-savvy teenager, had seen the notification appear in real time. A message she had never meant for me to see. Our little one will finally be with just us. The meaning was obvious. Jennifer and him had set a date. Tomorrow. She was leaving, taking the baby, walking away from the life we had built. And she had planned to do it under the guise of innocence. letting everyone believe she was a devoted wife right up until the last second. My stomach twisted with a dark, bitter satisfaction. She thought she had everything under control, thought she would blindside me, but she didn't know that I had been building my plan this entire time. I exhaled slowly, my grip on Thomas's shoulder firm but steady. "You did good, son. Really good." He nodded, watching me carefully. "What are you gonna do?" I looked across the room. Jennifer was laughing, glowing, basking in the warmth of the celebration, completely unaware that everything was about to change. I smiled. "Don't worry," I murmured. "I've got it handled." The party had reached its peak. Laughter echoed through the house, guests mingled with drinks in hand, and Jennifer was the center of attention, glowing, gracious, basking in the warmth of her carefully crafted life. She had no idea it was already over. I stood near the projector, watching her from a distance. The baby shower slideshow was still looping soft, sentimental images of our life together. Vacation photos, ultrasound images, pictures meant to cement the illusion of a happy family. But that illusion was about to be shattered. I had prepared everything. The files were ready. The Bluetooth connection was already hijacked. One simple command on my phone, and the carefully curated slideshow would be replaced by reality. I tapped the screen, and the room changed in an instant. The laughter died. Conversations halted. A new image flickered onto the massive screen. Not a baby picture. Not a happy memory. A text message. "Love, tomorrow everything changes. Our little one will finally be with just us." Silence. The air in the room thickened as people processed what they were seeing. Murmurs started. Confused glances. Jennifer froze, her champagne flute hovering midair. Another image. A photograph. Jennifer standing on the secluded beach, visibly pregnant. Months before she even told me, and just behind her, him. The whispers turned to gasps. Another image. A chat log. Him. "I can't wait to be a real family with you and our son." Jennifer, "Not long now. Just until the baby's here." A sharp inhale from one of her friends. Someone muttered, "Oh my God." Jennifer shot up from her chair, her face pale, eyes wide with panic. "Richard, what is this?" I didn't answer. Instead, I played the final piece. The audio. "My husband doesn't need to know the conception happened before the trip. Does he?" Jennifer's own voice. Clear, undeniable, filling the room. Then her laughter. "Some things are better left undiscovered." That was it. The tipping point. People recoiled. Some turned away. Others stared at her like they had never seen her before. And then he panicked. Jennifer's lover, who had tried to stay invisible in the crowd, suddenly stiffened. His face drained of color as he realized that everyone was looking at him now. I turned to him, my voice calm, even. "Would you like to explain?" He opened his mouth, closed it. Sweat beaded on his forehead. His gaze darted toward Jennifer, desperate, searching for a way out. Jennifer stammered, shaking her head violently. "This isn't real. He's lying. He faked." But she never got to finish, because he broke first. He cracked under the pressure, under the weight of every eye in the room. I didn't." His voice wavered. "It wasn't. Jennifer told me it was already over between you two." I tilted my head, feigning curiosity. "Oh? And the baby?" His breath hitched. Jennifer's lips parted in horror, realizing what was about to happen. But he was already too far gone. She said it was mine," he blurted out, his voice rising, desperate. "She told me you weren't even sleeping together. She said." He stopped. Dead silence. Jennifer's face twisted, her hands trembling. "You idiot." But it was too late. She had spent months weaving her web of lies, carefully manipulating everyone around her. And in one moment, he had unraveled it all. The room turned against her. Friends stepped away. Family members whispered in disgust. The perfect life she had built, the reputation she held so dearly, was collapsing right in front of her. And I stood in the wreckage, watching, satisfied. I woke up the next morning to silence. The house, once filled with the echoes of Jennifer's carefully crafted life, was now a hollow shell. No fake laughter, no lies dripping from her mouth, no perfectly staged illusions. She was gone, not by choice, She had tried to stay, tried to plead, tried to spin one last desperate excuse as the walls caved in around her. But there was no salvaging it. Not after last night. Not after the entire room had heard her own voice confess the truth. And not after what came next. I sat at my desk, sipping my coffee, staring at the open laptop in front of me. The last phase of my plan was already in motion. Jennifer had spent years constructing an image of herself. A brilliant career woman, a devoted wife, a soon-to-be loving mother. Every lie carefully placed, every detail curated. But perception is a fragile thing, and I had shattered it. The anonymous email had already been sent to her company's internal network, quietly slipping into inboxes overnight. A simple package. Screenshots, bank transactions, the falsified paternity test, the audio recording. No commentary, no accusations, just cold, undeniable facts. Her colleagues would see it. Her bosses, the very people who held the keys to her professional future. And then the final blow. An automated bot programmed weeks ago had released the same files onto multiple social media accounts, tagged under burner profiles, pushed into places where they would spread like wildfire. The message was simple. Some secrets are better left undiscovered. But this one belongs to everyone now. By the time she woke up, the damage had already been done. She wasn't just a woman caught cheating. She was a fraud, a manipulator, a liar who had not only betrayed her husband, but fabricated an entire pregnancy timeline to deceive two men at once. And her lover? He wasn't faring much better. The legal notice had gone out early that morning. His ex-wife had been waiting for an opportunity, any reason to drag him back to court for custody of their children. And now she had everything she needed. The messages, the admissions of deception, the financial inconsistencies. By the end of the week, he wouldn't just lose Jennifer. He'd lose his kids, too. One by one, every piece of their future collapsed. All that remained was to deliver the final gift. I walked to the entryway, where Jennifer's suitcase still sat, packed in a rush, her hands shaking too hard to zip it properly the night before. She thought she had a choice. She thought she could fix this. I picked up the envelope sitting neatly on top. Plane ticket. One way. First class. Paid for with her credit card. Destination? Him. She had wanted a new life with him. Now she had no other option. I grabbed a pen, scrawled one last message on the envelope before placing it back on top of her things. Your secret now belongs to everyone. Enjoy your new life. I walked away, locking the door behind me, and for the first time in years I felt nothing at all. She smiled when she said it. That's what stuck with me. Not the words, those came after. Not the name she dropped like it was a celebrity cameo in a trashy soap opera. No, it was the way she smiled. Like she was confessing to a high school crush instead of detonating 20 years of marriage over lasagna and cheap Cabernet. I'm in love with Michael, she said, folding her napkin like she was tidying up a goddamn picnic. My cousin. We grew up together. It's true love. Michael, her cousin. The one with the missing tooth and the permanent neck tan from riding ATVs through trailer parks in Missouri. The guy who once tried to sell us CBD dog treats at Thanksgiving. I didn't flinch, just stared at her. Not because I didn't care, because I was afraid I might do something military. I hadn't touched that side of myself in decades, not since Bosnia. But it's always there, coiled in the spine like an old injury. Your cousin Michael? I asked like I hadn't heard it the first time. She nodded, still smiling. It's not wrong, you know? We're not that close by blood. Technically, second cousins. And besides, love is love. That last part almost made me laugh. Almost. But my jaw locked, and I felt my molars grind. Not from rage, from restraint. Because I saw something in her face I hadn't seen in years. Freedom. She wasn't sorry. Not remotely. She was relieved. I glanced down at the table. Half-eaten meatloaf. Her favorite. I'd made it because it was Wednesday and we always had meatloaf on Wednesdays. I peeled the potatoes by hand. Even seasoned the damn green beans. Meanwhile, she was mentally packing a bag for Michael's place, where I imagine he keeps his forks in a shoebox and his mattress on the floor. You don't seem angry, she said, tilting her head like a therapist in a Netflix drama. I thought you'd explode. I looked at her. Really looked. Her hair still damp from the shower. She'd worn perfume. The good one I gave her on our 15th anniversary. Chanel. Not for me, clearly. For him. I'm not angry, I said. I'm processing. It wasn't a lie, but it wasn't the full truth either. I wasn't just processing the affair. I was processing the timeline, the missing weekends, the yoga retreats, the sudden interest in ancestry and family reunions. I was also thinking about the bronze urn in my study, the one with the eagle insignia and the hidden compartment. Inside was a flash drive labeled contingency plan. I hadn't looked at it in years, but tonight, it glowed in my memory like a flare in a dark jungle. "John, you've changed," she said softly, like she was the victim here. "You're distant, always working. You don't smile like you used to. This didn't just happen out of nowhere." There it was, the gaslight special. I nodded. "Sure, my fault. I forgot to book a couples massage with your cousin." She winced, just a flicker. Then it was gone. "You don't understand what we have," she said. "It's deep, spiritual. It's fate." I stood up, not suddenly, slowly, deliberately. I took my plate to the sink, washed it, dried it, placed it back in the cabinet. She just sat there, watching me like I was supposed to scream or throw something. But I've been trained to do something far more terrifying. Be calm, be patient, be silent. "I'll sleep in the guest room tonight," I said as I walked past her. She opened her mouth, maybe to argue, maybe to gloat. I'll never know. I didn't give her the chance, just kept walking. I shut the door behind me, sat on the edge of the twin bed, and stared at the floral wallpaper Linda insisted we keep because it felt cozy. I opened my phone and found the encrypted app one hadn't used since the Obama administration. Tomorrow I'd open the folder. Tomorrow the real work would begin. I thought maybe, just maybe, my daughter would have enough of me in her to see this for what it was. Emily pulled into the driveway 2 days later in her cherry red Honda, the one I paid off as a graduation gift. She walked in like she owned the place, hugged Linda first, tight, long, like they were part of some secret sisterhood now. Then she glanced at me, gave me one of those quick, obligatory hugs, the kind you give your dentist when you run into him at the grocery store. "Hey, Dad." I nodded. "Hey." We sat at the kitchen table again. Same damn table where Linda detonated our life 48 hours earlier. Now we were back for the aftershock. Emily looked excited. Not anxious. Not uncomfortable. Excited. She had this glimmer in her eyes I used to see on Christmas morning, back when she was 7 and believed in magic. Now it was back, only this time the magic was her mom banging a cousin. "So," she began, folding her hands like she was hosting a podcast. "I wanted to say how proud I am of both of you." I blinked. "Proud?" "Yeah," she said, smiling at her mother, who gave her a knowing little nod like they were co-conspirators in a rom-com. "It takes courage to follow your heart, even when people don't get it." I opened my mouth, then shut it again. I'd expected confusion, maybe a little anger. I mean, this was her mother, and her mother's cousin. Instead, I was watching my only child treat this like a Hallmark plot twist. "Emily," I said slowly, "you do know Michael's her cousin, right? Like, related?" She rolled her eyes. "Dad, it's not like that. He's her second cousin. It's legal in, like, every state that matters." I stared at her. "That's your argument?" "It's not about bloodlines," she said, and I swear to God, I felt something in my skull shift. "It's about energy. They have this connection. They finish each other's sentences. You can feel it." Yeah, I could feel it, all right, like food poisoning crawling through my gut. Linda didn't say much, just sipped her tea and watched me, waiting to see if I'd snap. I didn't. I stayed still, colder than I've ever been, and I've been frozen in a sleeping bag outside Kandahar in January. Emily reached across the table and patted my hand. "I know this is hard for you, but you have to understand, this is love. Real love. Not whatever you two were faking all these years." My heart didn't break. Calcified. That's when I realized I wasn't just losing my wife. I'd already lost my daughter. Not to death or drugs or distance, but to something worse, willing delusion. She wanted to believe this was love because it made things easier, simpler. Cleaner than accepting that her mother was a manipulative coward and her dad had been quietly carrying the weight of this house for 2 decades. I excused myself, walked out to the garage, and stood by the workbench. There, covered in a thin layer of sawdust, was the oak jewelry box I'd made for Emily when she turned 16. I opened it. Inside, tucked under the velvet lining, was the key to a small safety deposit box I'd kept secret from everyone. I held it in my hand for a long moment. Funny how betrayal clarifies things, makes decisions cleaner, sharper. They wanted a love story? Fine, they get one. But every fairy tale has a villain, and sometimes he builds the castle himself just to burn it down. At 5:42 a.m., I opened the closet and stared at a row of dress shirts I hadn't touched in months. The house was still. Linda was asleep in her bedroom and Emily was passed out in the guest room, blissfully ignorant to the wreckage they'd both helped manufacture. I didn't slam doors. I didn't break anything. I didn't leave a note. I just folded 5 shirts, 2 pairs of pants, socks, underwear, and packed them into a black Samsonite I hadn't used since my last trade show in Dallas. I left the good watch on the nightstand. That was the one she always complimented. Let her keep it. Let her look at it and remember the man who didn't scream when she gutted him. I went to the study, the room she always called John's cave. She hated it, said it smelled like old books and gun oil. That was the point. It was the only place in the house untouched by Pottery Barn. I slid open the bottom drawer of my desk and pulled out a slim brown folder. No title on the outside, just a faint imprint where a label used to be. I'd ripped it off years ago. Inside, in crisp alphabetical tabs, were names, dates, notarized pages, and 3 keys, 1 physical, 2 digital. It was labeled Contingency Plan. Not Plan B. Not just in case. Contingency, because I'd seen what betrayal looks like before. Not just in war zones. In boardrooms. In barracks. And yes, even at backyard barbecues with smiling neighbors. Linda always mocked me for being paranoid. Said I was cold, overcautious, emotionally distant. Maybe, but emotionally distant men don't wake up bankrupt. Inside the folder were irrevocable trust documents, drawn up after Linda's 3rd girls' weekend in Tahoe 5 years ago, when I spotted her browser history and found a reservation at a hotel we'd never stayed at. She swore it was an accident, blamed it on a surprise from her friend Jackie. I smiled, played dumb, and drove straight to my lawyer on Monday. Now those trusts, filed, notarized, and waiting, would do exactly what I built them to do. The moment she filed for divorce, a clause would trigger. One that quietly shifted the full financial weight of my company, properties, investments, and pension into a shell she couldn't touch. I built the system like I used to build combat readiness plans, quiet, thorough, and cold. There was also a letter inside, not addressed to Linda, not even to Emily. It was to my attorney, Ruth Carter. Sharp as hell, mid-50s, ran a boutique practice out of Savannah. Used to be married to a con artist. She'd know what to do. I locked the folder in a fireproof case and set it next to my suitcase. Then I stood in the center of the study and looked around one last time. Framed medals, commendations, the photo of me and Emily on her first fishing trip, her smile gap-toothed and smeared with peanut butter. All of it meant something once. Now it was just evidence. I walked down the hallway, past the closed doors. Didn't peek inside. Didn't pause. Just left. The morning air hit like a slap. Cold, sharp, real. I placed the suitcase in the trunk. The folder rode shotgun. I didn't drive to a motel or a friend's house. I drove to a location that no one in my family even knew existed. A 2-bedroom condo I'd quietly purchased under a trust name 4 years ago. I'd furnished it in secret down to the toothbrush. As I turned the key, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Not anger, not grief, control. Let Linda play house with her cousin. Let Emily plan Instagram captions for their incest-themed wedding. I was done reacting. Now I was writing the script. The pen moved like it had muscle memory. Line by line, signature by signature, I carved my name into documents I had written for a version of me that still believed in Linda. Not the woman sipping Chardonnay with her cousin-now-lover. No, this was back when I thought the marriage might still be real, salvageable, worth protecting. So I did what I was trained to do. I prepared for the ambush I couldn't yet see. It started 6 years ago. Linda had started getting distant. Not cold, she was never cold. Linda weaponized warmth. Late-night laughter in the kitchen on her phone. Names that didn't ring familiar. I remember her taking longer showers, coming out in towels with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. I didn't confront her. I observed. I recorded. And then, in the quiet hours of the morning, I rewrote our entire future. My business, a logistics firm I built from nothing after retiring from the Army, was restructured under a holding company in Wyoming. No kids, no partners, no liabilities. The military pension moved to a restricted trust that reactivates under spousal abandonment clauses. Our home, owned, technically by a limited liability company, on paper, nothing that screamed John Davis. The offshore account, a little bonus Linda never knew about, set up back when I was contracting in the Gulf. None of this was illegal, just strategic, like digging trenches before the shells fall. I'd run every scenario with Ruth. She'd even joked once, "You sure you're not still active duty? This is surgical." At the time, I'd laughed, said I was just being cautious. Truth was, I already knew. Not the details, not the names, but I knew. Linda had detached and she wasn't coming back. She stayed for convenience, for image, for Emily. But love? That left the building around the same time she reconnected with her cousin on Facebook. I'd kept the documents sealed, buried, untouched, because a part of me still wanted to believe that maybe the alarms were false. That maybe, just maybe, she'd come to her senses. Then she dropped the Michael bomb over dinner and smiled like it was a toast. Now, I sat in Ruth's office, papers in front of me, coffee going cold. She wore her signature black turtleneck. No makeup, just fire behind her eyes. She didn't ask if I was sure. She knew better. "You ready?" she asked. I didn't answer. I picked up the pen, flipped through the pile of counterpetitions, trust activation memos, asset transition triggers, and signed. Click, click, click. My signature flowed like a man cashing out at a blackjack table he'd already cleared. There was no drama, no fireworks, just clean, precise execution. Ruth leaned back when it was done. "She's not going to see this coming. I know. She thinks she's walking away with half your kingdom. She's walking into a cardboard castle," I said, standing. "She just doesn't know it yet." I glanced at the window. Sunlight through the blinds cut across the floor like prison bars. I didn't feel trapped. I felt free, but not in the way the movies show. No dramatic music, no fists in the air, just silence, control, the quiet knowledge that everything was already in motion. A chess game played 3 years ago was about to reach checkmate. Let her file first. Let her think she'd won. Let her believe she could walk in wearing white and walk out with my empire. Because by the time she realized what I'd done, it would already be hers. Every lie, every betrayal, all of it signed, sealed, and waiting. Linda served me the papers in our driveway, like she was handing over a damn potluck casserole. She pulled up in her new CRV, leased under her name, but paid with my company card back when she still pretended to do bookkeeping for the business. I was pruning hedges, gloves on, sweat across my forehead. She pulls in like the queen of suburbia, steps out wearing sunglasses and a smirk so rehearsed I swear I could hear the stage cue behind it. In her hand, a thick envelope, cream-colored, heavy stock, of course. "Let's keep this civil," she said, stepping just close enough for the neighbors to hear. "Sign and we'll all move on." I looked at her. No makeup, but lips glossed, hair tied back. She was glowing, not with happiness, but with the kind of smug satisfaction people wear when they think they've cornered you and still expect a thank you for the effort. "Civil," I repeated. "Sure." She held the envelope out. "My attorney says it's fair. I didn't even ask for the vacation home in Hilton Head. We can split the main house, half the pension, and I get the Lexus. Alimony, of course. Standard terms. Of course. You'll get visitation. Emily's grown, but holidays are important." I blinked. She really thought this was a negotiation, that this was me crawling away from the wreckage while she skipped off with the spoils and her cousin in tow. I took the envelope, didn't open it, just held it like a grenade I already knew was a dud. "I'll sign everything," I said calmly. She tilted her head. "You will. You want to move on. Who am I to stand in the way of true love?" The words hung there, She didn't flinch. Exactly, she said. We don't have to fight. We're adults. Sure, adults. Adults who commit adultery with blood relatives and then pat themselves on the back for their moral maturity. She turned on her heel, strutted back to the car, and drove off like she just handed me a pizza. Not divorce papers that could have gutted a lesser man. Inside the envelope, 42 pages of legal demands. Bullet points, spousal support projections, asset splits, custody suggestions for a daughter who was already too far gone to notice which parent was bleeding. What made me laugh, quietly later bourbon in hand, was that her lawyer's name was scribbled in blue ink at the bottom of the first page. Richard Langford. Dick. Perfect. Richard clearly hadn't done his homework. Or maybe he had, and Linda had just brushed it off. That's the thing about people like her. They confuse charm with leverage. She thought the version of me that used to rub her feet after long workdays was still the same guy signing these papers. What she didn't realize was, that man died the night she smiled and told me about Michael. Now she was negotiating with a man who'd already signed his heart away, who kept nothing but receipts. I didn't call Ruth that night. I didn't need to. She'd been expecting this. Instead, I pulled out a red marker and started circling numbers on the documents, like a teacher grading a very stupid test. Alimony? Cute. House split? Try again. Business assets? Not yours. Not legally. Not ethically. Not in any multiverse where logic applied. But sure, Linda, let's keep it civil. Let's move on. You filed first because you thought that meant control. I'm going to sign these papers with the same hand that wrote your ending. And you're going to thank me for it right before the floor gives out. Ruth Carter didn't believe in handshakes. She believed in war. Her office smelled like steel and eucalyptus. Minimalist furniture. No personal photos. Just degrees, awards, and a glass-encased letter from her ex-husband's second wife that read, "Thank you for destroying him so completely. I didn't have to." She greeted me with a nod and a tight smile that barely moved her face. Sharp suit. No-nonsense ponytail. No perfume. No warmth. She'd been a JAG officer once, before she left the military to specialize in high-asset divorces. If I had to build a legal weapon from scratch, I'd start with Ruth and give her fangs. She glanced at Linda's paperwork once and actually chuckled. Not laughed. Chuckled. Low and dry like a mechanic discovering your check engine light was hiding a cracked frame. She thinks she's won, Ruth said, flipping a page. Jesus, she really thinks this is a power play. I said nothing, just watched her annotate page 12 with a red pen like she was grading an idiot's dissertation. She wants the house? Technically, it's in an LLC. She doesn't know. Ruth nodded. She won't get it. Pension? Shielded. Triggered by filing. She whistled. I like you already. Then she leaned back and cracked her knuckles, one by one, staring out the window like a general planning an ambush. John, she said slowly, you're sitting on a tactical nuke, and she just handed you the launch codes. I handed her the folder, the real one, the one with the timelines, trust documentation, dated transfers, and quietly collected records of Linda's financial behavior over the last 6 years. Some of it petty. Spa treatments written off as business consultations. Some of it dirtier. Shared credit cards used to book hotels with Michael, meals for two in towns where no one was supposed to know their names. Ruth didn't flinch. She's seen worse. I want her to think she's getting everything, I said, until she's already gotten nothing. Ruth smiled then, not kindly, like a snake warming in the sun. We'll file a response that looks like surrender, she said. Give her the Lexus. Give her the TV. Hell, give her the rug if she wants it. But by the time the court date hits, the only thing she'll legally own is the lie she told herself. She started drafting. Her hands moved fast, typing without hesitation. Every clause was a trap. Every paragraph a polite middle finger in legalese. We'll make it sound cooperative, accommodating, passive, Ruth murmured as she worked. Let her think you're rolling over. She'll buy it, I said. She always underestimated silence. She won't read the fine print, Ruth added. People like Linda? They skim. They assume. And that's what made this so perfect. Linda didn't want a war. She wanted a coronation. She wanted me to kneel so she could walk off feeling like the noble victim who had to break free to find her true love. Let her have her story. Let her walk into court in white like it's a wedding. Let her drag Emily in with Instagram-ready smiles. Because while she's busy performing for the judge and waiting for the kingdom to drop into her lap, we'll already have buried the crown 6 feet under. Ruth closed the laptop. I'll have the revised agreement couriered to her lawyer by Thursday, she said, already reaching for her phone. They'll read it as a complete surrender. And when will they realize it's not? Her smile widened just slightly, midway through court. And just like that, the real divorce began. I was sipping coffee in the condo's kitchen. Black, no sugar, in a chipped mug that had the words "World's Okayest Dad" etched across the side. A gag gift from Emily back when she still thought I hung the moon. I kept it even after everything. Maybe out of habit. Maybe as a reminder that I used to matter to her. The phone buzzed. It was one of those pointless notifications. Emily tagged you in a photo. I hadn't heard from her in days. No calls. No texts. Not since she'd played defense attorney for her mother's spiritual connection with a second cousin. I opened the app. There they were. 3 people in the golden hour glow of a backyard patio. Linda, smiling like she'd never so much as burned toast. Michael, one arm wrapped tightly around her waist, the other holding a wine glass with pinky extended like a damn parody. And Emily, my daughter, grinning between them, holding up a peace sign like she was 13 again and hadn't just chosen a side. The caption? Dinner with Mom and Michael. Family forever, Redheart. Family forever. I stared at it for a long time. I zoomed in, like maybe I'd find some small detail that would redeem it. A sad glint in Emily's eye, a hand clenched too tightly, something to prove this wasn't what it looked like. But no, they looked happy, relaxed, complete. Without me, there wasn't any anger. Not this time. Just a dull, cold weight settling in my gut. Like cement hardening. I didn't comment, didn't message her. I just closed the app and placed the phone face down on the table. The coffee had gone cold. I stood up, walked to the hallway closet, and pulled out the old shoebox I'd tucked behind the blankets. Inside, buried beneath some Polaroids and an expired passport, was a thumb drive. Red tape wrapped around it with a single word written in block letters. Failsafe. It held backups of every financial document, every trust agreement, every time-stamped copy of Linda's sketchy expenses, even a private investigator's photos I'd paid for and then buried, hoping I'd never need them. The pictures were blurry. The faces weren't. I stared at the drive. My thumb brushed the edge. There was no going back. Not now. This wasn't just a betrayal between spouses. This was a purge. A complete overwrite of the family I'd thought I was protecting. Emily wasn't confused. She wasn't caught in the middle. She was smiling. Proud. Proud to stand next to a man who used to call me Captain Buzzkill behind my back when he'd show up drunk to family reunions. The same man who once told a story about being almost valedictorian before blowing out his knee in a softball game. Michael. The dollar store version of me. Linda traded up in her mind. Younger. Easier. Dumber. And she convinced our daughter it was destiny. That I was the dead weight dragging everyone down with structure and restraint. That night I didn't sleep. But not because of grief. I started printing things. Bank records. IP logs. Screenshots. Everything Ruth might need to finish writing the final chapter. Every asset movement. Every date. I organized it into folders. Legal, financial, psychological. Yes, psychological. Ruth always said judges respond to patterns, not explosions. You want a judge to rule in your favor? Don't show them chaos. Show them a system. By 3 a.m., I had a binder the weight of a newborn. Emily wanted family forever. She'd get it. She just wouldn't like the inheritance. Court was scheduled for 9:30 a.m., but Linda showed up at 9:02, wearing white. Not cream, not beige, white. Like it was a damn wedding and she was the bride of second chance morality. She walked in like she was floating, chin high, arms bare, not a single wrinkle on that dress. It was tailored, tight at the waist, wide at the hem. Almost bridal, almost mocking. The kind of thing a woman wears when she believes the world is finally giving her what it owes her. Her hand gripped Emily's like they were entering prom night together, mother and daughter, bound in betrayal and ignorance. Michael trailed behind them, 2 steps back, like a sidekick trying not to trip over his own loafers. He wore a blazer that didn't fit and sunglasses indoors, smiling like a man who didn't have a single legal document to his name but thought he'd just inherited an empire. They took their seats on the left side. I was already there, second row on the right, alone, black suit, no tie, the same watch I wore to my father's funeral. A single stack of folders beside me, 3, to be exact, each labeled in subtle gold. Assets, timeline, and disclosure. Neat, clean, silent. Ruth sat next to me, scanning her tablet, not speaking. We didn't need to rehearse anything. Everything had already been choreographed. This wasn't opening night, it was the final act. I looked across the room. Linda met my eyes. She smiled. Not cruelly, not apologetically, just confidently, like she believed this moment was her prize. The court, the judge, the performance. She had rehearsed it all in her mind and cast herself as the dignified woman who finally chose happiness after enduring years with the emotionally unavailable husband. Then she leaned toward Emily and whispered something. Emily giggled. Linda tucked a piece of hair behind her ear like she was posing for a photo that wasn't being taken. For a moment, I wondered if she realized how much she looked like a parody of herself, an actress who believed her own press release. The bailiff called for order. Everyone stood. Judge Hammonds entered, elderly, deliberate, famously unsympathetic to drama. He adjusted his glasses and gave the room a quick scan before sitting down and opening his file. "This is Davis versus Davis," he said. "Final hearing. All parties present." Linda's lawyer, Dick Langford, rose. "Representing petitioner Linda Davis, Your Honor." Ruth stood next to me. "Respondent is present and represented." The judge nodded. "Let's begin." Langford went first, outlining Linda's request. Division of assets, spousal support, vehicle retention, and acknowledgement of amicable separation. He said amicable like he practiced it in the mirror. Linda beamed through the whole thing, like a valedictorian waiting to be handed the mic. When it was Ruth's turn, she barely spoke. No theatrics, just handed over the folders, assets, timeline, disclosure. "This is all we're submitting today, Your Honor," she said, her tone neutral. Surgical. The judge blinked. "You're not disputing the settlement?" "No, Your Honor," Ruth said. "We're confirming it. Everything is already in motion." Linda's eyes narrowed slightly. She glanced toward me, confused. I didn't move. Langford shifted. "Wait, so you're not contesting?" Ruth smiled politely. "We're simply letting the documents speak." The judge opened the first folder, and Linda, still glowing in her wedding white dress, had no idea that every petal in her bouquet had already been shredded, because what she thought was surrender was just the wrapping paper. And inside it, the trap was already snapping shut. Langford cleared his throat, tapped his pen against the edge of the table like he was about to unveil the next great American compromise. "Your Honor, we've outlined the settlement terms. My client retains the Lexus, the primary residence, and is requesting spousal support consistent with the standard 20-year marriage guideline. She has also agreed to forego any claim to Mr. Davis's business, generously, I might add, so long as alimony is maintained." I glanced over at Ruth. She gave a half nod, didn't blink. That was the cue. The judge looked at me. "Mr. Davis, have you reviewed these terms?" I stood slowly. "Yes, Your Honor. I've reviewed everything. Do you have any objections?" I turned to Linda. She was glowing, hands clasped in her lap, head tilted ever so slightly, like she was posing for a portrait. She looked relieved, victorious, already halfway into her next chapter. "No objections," I said. Langford nearly choked on his own teeth. He flipped a page as if expecting a trick. Linda leaned forward slightly, the smirk practically vibrating off her face. "Thanks for being reasonable," she whispered, just loud enough for me to hear. I nodded, just once. Silent. The judge nodded back. "Very well. If both parties are in agreement, we'll proceed to signature." Ruth slid the final page in front of me. The acknowledgement of settlement. A single signature required. My name, dated, witnessed by the court. I picked up the pen. Black ink. Ballpoint. Click. And I signed. There were no grand speeches. No objections. No fireworks. Just the sound of ink on paper and the quiet unraveling of Linda's future. Because what I'd signed wasn't just her fantasy agreement. It was her trap, printed on legal stationery, disguised as everything she'd asked for. The primary residence, held by the LLC I controlled, activated under her filing. She didn't own it. She leased it, and the lease expired in 90 days. The Lexus, already re-registered under her name 2 weeks ago, full title, along with full liability. The car had outstanding taxes for unpaid tickets, a mechanical issue flagged in the inspection I'd conveniently left for her to discover later. The alimony, structured monthly under a strict clause tied to her marital status and cohabitation. One confirmed report of her living with Michael, which I'd arranged through a private investigator and timestamped video, would trigger an immediate freeze. And the business? She waived all claim. Good, because she never had one. Everything was layered, trusts, shells, documents dated and sealed long before this farce began. And because she was so focused on winning, she never questioned the silence. Never thought to ask why a man who had built everything from scratch was so willing to hand it all over with a smile. Because in her world, men either begged or exploded. I did neither. I signed. I handed the papers back. The judge nodded. Settlement accepted and binding. This court is adjourned. The gavel didn't thunder. Clicked. Linda stood first. She turned to me like we were ex-classmates who could now be friends again. You surprised me, she said quietly. I thought you'd fight. I finally met her eyes. Why would I fight over something I already burned down? She frowned, confused. But it was too late. The ashes were already cooling. Judge Hammonds adjusted his glasses and flipped through the papers with a slow, deliberate rhythm. The courtroom had already begun to empty. Bailiff shifting his weight near the door, Langford zipping his briefcase. Linda swiping through her phone like this was a brunch check-in instead of a legal proceeding. Then the judge stopped. His brow creased. He flipped a page backward, then forward again. He looked up. Mrs. Davis? Linda straightened, still radiating smug grace in that white dress. Yes, Your Honor? You've reviewed the settlement in full? She nodded quickly. Of course. My attorney handled everything. It's all fair. I've agreed. The judge tapped the page. You're aware that your total awarded assets are valued at $48,000? Linda blinked. Excuse me? $48,000, he repeated, now looking directly at her. No claims to the business. No ownership of the property. No access to the military pension or trust funds. No alimony due to undisclosed cohabitation. Just the Lexus, registered in your name, and $48,000 from a joint checking account. Langford froze mid-zip. What? Linda said again, the smile gone now, voice cracking just a little. Judge Hammonds turned the page toward her, spinning the file around so she could read it herself. You initialed this page, Mrs. Davis, and signed at the bottom. This is the finalized copy. It's been filed. I thought. She turned to Langford. That's not what you showed me. Langford opened his mouth, then closed it, flipping madly through his own copy, eyes darting line to line like a man realizing he brought a water pistol to a gunfight. Ruth leaned over and whispered, Watch her closely. I did. The first stage was confusion. Linda stared at the documents like they were written in a foreign language. Her lips moved as she read silently, trying to undo the meaning with sheer denial. The second stage was recognition. Her eyes locked on the clause. Activation of irrevocable trust upon filing by petitioner. Then the schedule of asset transfers. Then the timeline of financial restructuring. Then the signatures. Hers. Initials, dates, notary stamps. Wait, no, this isn't right. She shot up, papers trembling in her hands. I didn't agree to this. I thought, Richard, you told me. Langford was pale now. Linda, these were the documents you approved. I forwarded everything you signed. You didn't explain this. He gets everything, everything. The judge raised a hand. Mrs. Davis, please sit down. No, I want to amend. This isn't what I meant to agree to. This is fraud. Ruth stood perfectly calm. Your Honor, the documents were disclosed well within the discovery window. Mrs. Davis had full legal representation. She initialed every page. She confirmed the settlement verbally in this court 5 minutes ago. She was even thanked by the respondent for being reasonable. I looked up at Linda then, and for the first time in years, she looked small. Not poised, not cunning, not triumphant. Small. A woman in a too-white dress realizing she danced into a trap she helped design. "You tricked me," she hissed. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. The judge exhaled through his nose. "Mrs. Davis, this settlement is final. You signed. You agreed. You disclosed nothing that would nullify this agreement. Unless you have proof of coercion or forgery, which I strongly doubt, you're bound." Linda sat down hard. The air sucked from her like someone had punched her in the gut. Emily looked at her, wide-eyed, then glanced at me. Her lips parted, maybe to speak, but she said nothing. The judge stood. "Court is dismissed." He left, and in the silence that followed, only one sound remained. The soft, rasping breath of a woman realizing she had just sold herself the rope. Ruth didn't gloat. That's what made it hurt more. She slid the folder across the polished courtroom table with the same motion you'd use to pass a menu. Neat, smooth, lethal. "This," she said, "is the respondent's full financial declaration, filed months ago, in compliance with court rules and shared with petitioner's counsel during preliminary discovery." Linda stared at the folder like it had teeth. Langford reached for it, eyes darting down the page, and I watched his expression collapse in stages. First surprise, then alarm, then that twitch of panic lawyers get when they realize they've let their client sign off on their own execution. "These are trusts," he mumbled. "Irrevocable. Filed before the petition date. Activation clause on spousal abandonment?" "Correct," Ruth said, cool as an ice bath. "Triggered automatically upon the petitioner's filing of divorce." Langford looked up. "That's not enforceable. You can't just move assets around mid-proceeding." "You're right," Ruth said, "which is why everything was moved prior to the proceeding. We followed every rule. The trigger clause simply locked them down after she filed. Not a single asset changed hands after that point." She opened another folder and slid it to the judge. "Your Honor, Tab 4 contains dated signatures, financial ledgers, trustee contacts, and third-party notarization. All verified, all legal." The judge turned to Linda. "Mrs. Davis, do you contest this?" She stood, rigid, pale. "This wasn't explained to me," she snapped. "I thought I was getting half. I thought we agreed." The judge tilted his head. "He disclosed the trusts. Your signature confirms acknowledgement. Did you read the disclosure documents?" Richard told me it was just standard stuff. I sent everything," Langford said, raising both hands. "You signed off. Emailed. Twice." Linda turned to me, and this time there was no smirk. No smug calm. Just open, raw fury. "You cheated me." I looked at her for the first time in minutes. Held her gaze. "No," I said. "You traded. And you didn't read the price tag." Her voice rose. "You planned this. This was premeditated. Like love with your cousin?" Ruth said under her breath, loud enough for the judge to hear. He didn't laugh, but he didn't object either. Linda slammed her hand on the table. "I deserve half. I gave him my life. I raised his daughter. Our daughter," I corrected. She spun to the judge. "You can't let this stand. This is malicious." He adjusted his glasses and leaned back. "Mrs. Davis, you filed for divorce. He disclosed his finances. You accepted the settlement you signed, and you confirmed those signatures in court. You weren't coerced. You weren't deceived. You simply didn't read. That is not grounds for reversal." "You smug bastard," she hissed at me. "You set me up." I stood and gathered the folders. Ruth followed my lead, already tucking her tablet into her bag. "I wrote it all down years ago," I said quietly. "I just waited for you to hand me the pen." The judge rose. "Court is adjourned." Linda didn't move, just stood there frozen, staring at the pieces of a kingdom she thought she'd inherited. And now she was walking out with a Lexus that needed brakes and a bank account smaller than her ego. And for once in her life, there was no one left to blame but the mirror. The coffee was bitter, strong, just the way I liked it. The porch creaked under my chair as I leaned back and watched the early light creep across the yard. I'd mowed it 2 days ago. Edges clean. No weeds. It looked better than the main house ever did. Smaller, quieter. Mine. No photos on the walls. No ghost of a wedding dress hung behind a closet door. Just clean wood, muted colors, and peace. Then the phone buzzed. I glanced at the screen. Linda. I stared for a second, debating whether to open it. Curiosity won out. I swiped. You ruined me. You turned Emily against me. Rot in hell. That was it. No punctuation beyond rage. I scrolled back. There were no earlier messages. She hadn't reached out since court. No appeals, no voicemails. Just silence. Then this. I tapped over to Emily's page. It had taken me weeks to build up the nerve to look. And it was blank. Blocked. No photos. No captions. No birthday notifications. Just the empty gray circle and that tiny, final word. Add friend. I nodded slowly. Took another sip. Let the bitterness settle under my tongue. So that's how it ended. Not with screaming. Not with cops or courtroom dramatics. Just silence. Quiet deletions. Digital amputations. Linda had burned every bridge thinking she was headed toward a better kingdom. But kingdoms take work. Michael didn't know how to build one. He could crack open a beer and toss a steak on a grill, sure. But manage her moods? Her expectations? Her history? She'd learn. Eventually. And Emily? I stopped blaming her. She made a choice. Maybe not a fair one. Maybe not an informed one. But a choice all the same. Someday 5, 10 years from now. She might come knocking, teary-eyed, asking for forgiveness in exchange for memories. Or maybe not. Either way, I'd be ready. Because this story wasn't about loss. Not really. It was about removal. About cutting out the rot before it spread any deeper. I hadn't just survived Linda's betrayal. I'd outmaneuvered it. Silently. Precisely. I'd given her everything she asked for. And she signed for it, grinning. Now she was just a number in a court file. A cautionary tale in a Facebook group she'd eventually leave in shame. I deleted the message. Let the horizon stretch wide. Justice doesn't always come with thunder or applause. Sometimes, it arrives in a quiet morning, on a porch that no one else knows exists, with a warm mug and no more damn questions. Welcome to Shattered Trust Stories. If you're here for raw, real stories of betrayal and hard choices, hit subscribe and let us know where you're tuning in from. Let's get into it. A few nights ago, I stumbled upon a truth so devastating. It felt like my entire life had been a lie. I was at work late, testing the new security system I'd installed at home. A cutting-edge piece of tech with crystal-clear video and audio capabilities. I'd been fiddling with its features for days, syncing it to my phone, adjusting settings. That night, I finally had a moment to try out the live feed. The system was so advanced it could pick up the faintest sounds with astonishing clarity, even quiet conversations in the background. I tapped into the app, curious to see how it worked in real time. At first, all I heard was faint ambient noise from the house, the hum of the refrigerator, the soft creak of floorboards. But then voices came through. My wife, Kate, was talking on the phone in the living room. Her voice was calm, almost casual, but something about her tone made me pause. I turned up the volume, leaning closer to my phone. "She doesn't suspect a thing," Kate said, a hint of amusement in her voice. My stomach tightened. Was she talking about me? I didn't want to jump to conclusions, but the way she spoke, so relaxed, so confident, made my pulse quicken. The voice on the other end of the call was muffled, but Kate's laughter cut through like a knife. No, he's clueless," she continued. "Albert, please. He's too wrapped up in his little gadgets to notice what's right in front of him." Her words hit me like a slap. I froze, my mind racing. Was this some kind of joke? I wanted to believe I'd misheard her, that there was some innocent explanation. But then her tone shifted. The laughter disappeared, replaced by something colder, more deliberate. "Okay, hold on, let me call you back," she said quickly. A second later, I heard her dialing another number. My heart pounded as I realized she wasn't done. I adjusted the feed, holding my breath as the audio picked up again. "Hi, thanks for calling me back," Kate said, her voice now sharp and professional. Yes, I've made my decision. We'll move forward with the plan. Plan? What plan? My mind was spiraling, desperate to piece together what I was hearing. The silence on the other end of the call only made her next words more chilling. Once we pin this on him, she said slowly, her words deliberate, I'll take the kids, the house, and everything else. He won't see it coming. My hands clenched the phone so tightly it hurt. Her voice was so steady, so calculated, like she was discussing a business deal and not dismantling our entire life. My jaw tightened as she continued. No, it won't be an issue, she said almost casually. Jake's already lined everything up. All we need is for Albert to stay predictable, and trust me, he always is. Jake. That name shot through me like a dagger. Jake was her coworker, the one she'd always brushed off as a friend, the one I dismissed as harmless despite the nagging doubts in the back of my mind. Hearing his name now, in this context, made my blood run cold. Kate let out a short laugh, like the conversation was amusing her. He'll never see it coming, she repeated, her voice dripping with confidence. I sat there in my office, paralyzed by what I just heard. This wasn't just betrayal. This was a cold, calculated plot to destroy me. Looking back now, the signs were everywhere, but I was too blind or too trusting to see them for what they were. It wasn't just one thing. It was a series of small, unsettling moments that, at the time, I dismissed as normal hiccups in a long marriage. But now, they felt like the breadcrumbs of a calculated betrayal. It started months ago. Kate began spending long stretches in the backyard, pacing with her phone pressed to her ear. She always claimed she was catching up with old friends, but the calls were oddly secretive. Her laughter would float through the air, light and carefree, but sometimes I'd catch fragments of her words. Once, I distinctly heard her say, "You're right, he really is oblivious." When I asked her later what that was about, she brushed it off with a smile. Just girl talk, she'd said, and I didn't press further. Now, I wonder if every one of those conversations was part of something bigger, something she was plotting right under my nose. The arguments started not long after. They were small at first, almost silly. Fights over things like where the car keys were or why the groceries weren't put away properly. But they escalated quickly, her tone sharper than I'd ever heard before. I remember one time, after one of her long calls, she stormed into the house, furious that I hadn't taken the trash out yet. It was 10 minutes past the usual time. 10 minutes. It turned into a full-blown shouting match, with her calling me lazy and unreliable. At the time, I chalked it up to stress. But now, I wonder, was she looking for reasons to paint me as the bad guy? It wasn't just her tone. It was the way she looked at me during those arguments. Her eyes weren't filled with anger or frustration. They were calculating, like she was cataloging every word I said, every reaction I had. There was something almost rehearsed about her outbursts, as if she was trying to provoke me, to get me to say or do something she could later use against me. The distance between us wasn't just emotional, it felt intentional, strategic. I'd catch her staring at me sometimes, a faint smirk playing on her lips, like she knew something I didn't. Those moments would pass quickly, and she'd go back to her normal self, laughing with the kids or scrolling through her phone like nothing had changed. But something had changed. I could feel it, even if I couldn't put my finger on it. And then there were the little things she started doing that made no sense. Changing the password on her phone, for security reasons. Insisting on handling all the bills herself when we'd always done it together, or canceling plans at the last minute because she was too tired. At the time, I saw these as quirks, maybe even signs of her needing some space. Now, they feel like pieces of a puzzle I didn't know I was supposed to solve. In hindsight, it's so clear. Every fight, every hushed call, every cold glance. It wasn't just a symptom of a rough patch. It was her building a case against me, brick by brick, while I stood there, oblivious to the walls closing in around me. The moment it all came crashing down wasn't because of some forgotten phone or suspicious text. It was much messier than that. It was in the middle of one of those explosive arguments that had become our new normal. This time, it was about the thermostat. She stormed into the kitchen, shouting about how I'd left it set too high, and I shot back, asking why every little thing seemed to set her off lately. That's when it happened. Maybe if you listened for once, Jake, we wouldn't have to go through this, she snapped, her face flushed with anger. Time froze, The word hung in the air like a bomb waiting to detonate. Jake. Not Albert. Not even Babe or Han. Jake. Her eyes widened for a fraction of a second before narrowing into a glare. What? She said, her tone sharp, like she was daring me to call her out. My stomach churned, but I tried to keep my voice steady. Did you just call me Jake? I asked, my words measured, deliberate. She scoffed, rolling her eyes as she turned away. Don't be ridiculous, Adalbert, she said, her voice dripping with condescension. You're overthinking again. You always do this. You're so paranoid. But her slip had already cut deeper than any knife. I stared at her, searching her face for any sign of remorse, of guilt. Instead, all I saw was anger, venomous, calculated anger, as if this was somehow my fault. Who the hell is Jake? I demanded, my voice rising despite my effort to stay calm. She crossed her arms, glaring at me like I was the problem. You're being insane, she snapped. Jake is nobody. Just stop it. Her deflection only made the pit in my stomach grow. My mind raced, connecting dots I didn't even know existed until that moment. Jake, the name she just let slip, wasn't nobody. He was somebody. He was the coworker she'd always laughed a little too hard with at office parties. The one she insisted was just a friend. When I'd asked about him months ago, I took a step closer, my voice cold now. Don't lie to me, Kate. Is Jake the reason for all of this? The phone calls, the fights, the secrets. Her face twisted into a mask of indifference, her lips curling into a mocking smile. You're unbelievable, she said, shaking her head like I was some irrational fool. I don't have to stand here and listen to this. She grabbed her purse and stormed out of the kitchen, slamming the door behind her. I stood there, my heart pounding in my chest, her words echoing in my mind. You're paranoid. Jake is nobody. But her slip had already exposed everything. Jake wasn't nobody. He was the answer to all the questions I hadn't dared to ask before. And now there was no turning back. The need for answers clawed at me like a sickness. I couldn't take her evasions, her lies, her venomous attempts to paint me as crazy. So one evening, when Kate grabbed her keys and muttered something about meeting a friend, I made a decision. I would follow her. I didn't think twice. I grabbed my own keys and tailed her car at a safe distance. My palms were slick with sweat as I maneuvered through the streets, keeping my headlights dimmed, staying just far enough back. I watched her weave through town, taking turns that led out of our usual stomping grounds and into the wealthier part of the city. The houses grew larger, the driveways longer, the gates taller. She finally slowed near a sprawling estate surrounded by high hedges and a black iron gate. My chest tightened as I watched her pull into the driveway. A few moments later, the gate slid open, and she disappeared inside. I killed my engine and parked down the street, just out of view, my heart pounding so loudly I could barely think. What was she doing here? Who did she know in a place like this? I crept closer on foot, careful to stay in the shadows of the manicured trees lining the street. As I reached the edge of the property, I spotted them, Kate and Jake, through the slats of the gate. They were standing near the entrance to the house, bathed in the warm glow of the porch light. Kate was laughing, her arm casually draped over his shoulder, her body language so familiar, so intimate, it made my stomach churn. Jake leaned in close, his hand resting possessively on her waist as he said something that made her laugh even harder. It wasn't the laugh she shared with me. It was lighter, more carefree, like she was a different person entirely when she was with him. I strained to hear them, crouching behind a low hedge just outside the gate. Their voices were low, but I caught fragments of their conversation, words that sent a fresh wave of anger and confusion crashing over me. When this is over, Kate said, her voice trailing off into a giggle. Jake's response was quieter, but his tone was unmistakably serious. We need to get it done faster. I don't want this dragging out. My mind raced. What were they talking about? What needed to be done? And why was she laughing about it? I stayed there, hidden, watching them like a stranger spying on someone else's life. The life I thought I had with her was unraveling right in front of me, piece by piece. I wanted to burst through the gate, to demand answers, to confront her with everything I knew, or thought I knew. But I stayed frozen, torn between fury and desperation. afraid of what else I might uncover if I stepped closer. After a few minutes, they went inside, the door closing behind them. I stood there in the dark, my fists clenched, my mind reeling. Whatever this was, it was bigger than I'd imagined. And I wasn't sure I was ready for what I'd find next. Dinner started out like any other. The sound of utensils clinking against plates and the kids chatting about their day filling the room. I sat there, barely touching my food, my heart pounding as I rehearsed the words in my head. The weight of what I'd seen at Jake's estate, what I'd overheard, was too much to carry alone. I needed to confront her, and I needed her to face the truth. Not just in front of me, but in front of the kids, too. Maybe if she saw their faces, she'd feel some shred of shame, some flicker of guilt. "Kate," I said, my voice calm but firm, cutting through the noise. She glanced up from her plate, her fork midair. The kids looked at me, puzzled by my tone. "What?" she said, her expression neutral, though there was a flicker of something in her eyes. Wariness, maybe. "I know about Jake," I said, my words landing like a thunderclap in the room. The kids froze, their eyes darting between us. Confusion etched on their faces. Kate's hand paused, her fork hovering for a second before she slowly set it down. "I'm sorry, what?" she asked, her voice deceptively calm, her face a mask of feigned innocence. "Don't do that," I snapped, my anger bubbling to the surface. "Don't play dumb. I know what's been going on, the calls, the meetings, the lies. I know everything, Kate. Everything." She leaned back in her chair, crossing her arms, her expression shifting to something colder, more calculating. And then, to my shock, she smirked. "You're pathetic, Adalbert," she said, her voice dripping with disdain. "You think anyone's going to believe you over me? You're delusional." The kids looked at her, their faces filled with confusion and fear. "Mom," our daughter whispered, her voice trembling, but Kate didn't even glance at her. Her eyes were locked on mine, daring me to push further. "This isn't just about me believing it, Kate," I shot back. "It's about the truth, about what you've been doing behind my back while pretending everything's fine." She laughed, actually laughed, as if I just told her the most ridiculous joke she'd ever heard. "The truth?" she scoffed. "Oh, please, you've been paranoid for months. Always snooping, always suspicious. Maybe if you spent more time being a decent husband and less time playing detective, I wouldn't have to look elsewhere." Her words hit me like a slap, but what struck me even harder was the way she looked at me, with absolute contempt, like I was beneath her. "I saw you with him, Kate," I said, my voice shaking now, the fury and betrayal overwhelming me. "At his house, laughing, talking about getting it done faster. What the hell were you planning? Tell me." But she just rolled her eyes, her smirk never faltering. "You don't know what you're talking about," she said dismissively. "And even if you did, who's going to believe you? Me, the loving wife and mother? Or you, the unstable lunatic who's been stalking his own wife?" I glanced at the kids, their wide, terrified eyes staring at both of us. My daughter looked like she was on the verge of tears, while my son sat frozen, gripping his fork like it was the only thing anchoring him to the moment. "That's enough," I shouted, slamming my fist on the table. The plates rattled, and the kids flinched, but Kate didn't even blink. She leaned forward now, her smirk fading into something darker, more menacing. "You're out of your depth, Adalbert," she said quietly, her voice dripping with malice. "Keep pushing and you'll regret it. Trust me." It wasn't just a warning. It was a threat, and in that moment, I realized just how far gone she was, and how much danger I was truly in. That night, I sat alone in my study, staring at the family photo on my desk. In it, we were all smiles, me, Kate, the kids, a picture-perfect family. But the truth had shattered that illusion. The woman I thought I knew, the life we'd built together, was nothing but a lie. Her words from dinner echoed in my mind. "You're pathetic, Adalbert." The smirk, the venom, the threat. It was all I needed to know that reasoning with her was pointless. She wasn't going to stop, and if she was willing to destroy me, I wasn't going to sit back and make it easy for her. I opened my laptop, my hands steady despite the storm inside me. I logged into our bank accounts, staring at the balances. Savings, checking, joint investments, it was all sitting there, ripe for the taking. I thought about how she'd laugh if I let her walk away with everything, how she'd probably celebrate with Jake once she'd wiped me out. My jaw tightened. Not a chance. With a few clicks, I initiated the transfers, draining every last cent into a new account I'd opened in my name weeks earlier when my suspicions first began to surface. I didn't hesitate, didn't second-guess myself. By the time I was done, the accounts were empty, the credit cards canceled, and the auto payments for her gym, her subscriptions, and her flashy new car all turned off. I left just enough in the kids' college fund. It wasn't their fault any of this was happening. But for Kate, nothing. She'd made it clear I was her target, and now I was making it clear I wasn't going down without a fight. Before I walked out, I grabbed a piece of paper and scrawled a single sentence across it. No long explanations, no pleas for her to reconsider. Just 7 words that said everything I needed to say. You can't steal what's already gone. I placed the note on the kitchen counter, right next to the coffee machine she used every morning, and left the house. No bags packed, no dramatic farewell. Just the clothes on my back and the knowledge that I was finally in control. As I drove away, I felt a strange sense of calm. For the first time in months, I wasn't reacting to her games. I was taking action. And while I didn't know what she'd do when she found out, one thing was certain. The playing field had shifted, and this time, it was on my terms. The next day, I braced myself for the storm I knew was coming. Kate was many things, vindictive, cunning, relentless, but above all, she was predictable when cornered. Still, even knowing her nature, I wasn't prepared for just how far she'd go. It was around midday when she stormed into my office. I was in the middle of reviewing some reports when the door flew open, slamming against the wall. Heads popped out from nearby cubicles, my colleagues craning their necks to see what was happening. And there she was, Kate, dressed to perfection but with fury blazing in her eyes. "Adalbert!" she shrieked, her voice echoing down the hallway. My boss, Mr. Fletcher, had just walked by and froze mid-step, turning to look at the commotion. My blood ran cold, but I forced myself to stay calm. "Kate," I said evenly, setting my papers down. "This isn't the time or place." "Oh, it's exactly the place," she spat, pointing a manicured finger at me. "Everyone here deserves to know the kind of man you really are." Whispers started rippling through the office as my coworkers exchanged uneasy glances. A few looked at me, silently asking if they should intervene, but I shook my head. I wasn't giving her the satisfaction of seeing me lose control. "Kate, let's go outside," I said, standing up, my voice measured. But she wasn't having it. "Why? So you can try to intimidate me like you always do?" she barked. Then, with a dramatic sweep of her arm, she turned to address the room. "Did you all know he has violent tendencies? Oh, he's charming here at work, I'm sure, but at home, he's a completely different person." The air in the office grew tense. Mr. Fletcher stepped forward, his brow furrowed, while my colleagues exchanged glances filled with a mix of discomfort and doubt. A few whispered among themselves, some clearly unsure of how to react. I kept my face neutral, though my fists clenched at my sides. "That's enough, Kate," I said firmly. "You know that isn't true." "Oh, don't you dare," she hissed, her voice dripping with venom. "You've been gaslighting me for years, making me feel crazy while you undermine everything I do. And now, after everything I've done for you, you drain the accounts and leave me with nothing." There it was. This wasn't about the supposed violence. This was her retaliation for taking away her access to my hard-earned money. "Kate," I said, locking eyes with her, my voice low but steady, "you're embarrassing yourself. If you don't leave now, I'll have no choice but to call security." Her face twisted into a snarl, but I saw the flicker of doubt behind her eyes. She wanted me to snap, to prove her wild accusations true in front of everyone. But I didn't take the bait. Mr. Fletcher stepped forward, his voice calm but authoritative. "Mrs. Stevens, I suggest you leave. This is a professional workplace, and we don't tolerate this kind of behavior." Kate's jaw clenched, her eyes darting between me and Mr. Fletcher. For a moment, I thought she might escalate further. But then she let out a bitter laugh, shaking her head. "You think you've won, Adalbert?" she said, her voice icy. This is far from over. She spun on her heel and stormed out, her heels clicking sharply against the tile floor. The room stayed silent for a beat before the murmur of whispers returned. Mr. Fletcher gave me a long, assessing look before nodding and walking away. I let out a slow breath, sitting back down as the adrenaline drained from my body. My co-workers avoided eye contact, pretending to be engrossed in their work, but I could feel their unease lingering in the air. Kate thought she could destroy me with lies and theatrics. What she didn't realize was that I wasn't the same man she'd manipulated for years. I had the truth and the evidence to protect myself, and I wasn't backing down. Kate had always been a master of appearances. Her charm was magnetic, her smile disarming, and she wielded them like weapons. So, when the fallout from our confrontation at my office wasn't enough to humiliate me into submission, she pivoted. She organized a fundraiser, a grand event to raise awareness for a local charity she'd barely supported before. It was clear to anyone paying attention that the real purpose was to restore her image and make me look like the villain in the eyes of the community. But this time I was 2 steps ahead. Days before the event, I had already planned my move. The recording of her phone call, the one where she laid out her cold, calculated plan to frame me, was my trump card. I knew timing was everything, so I waited, biding my time as she sent out invitations, curated the guest list, and meticulously prepared her speech. The night of the fundraiser arrived, and I watched from afar as people poured into the venue. It was a dazzling display of opulence. Twinkling lights, elegant table settings, and a sea of well-dressed attendees. Kate stood at the center of it all, beaming, her voice ringing out as she greeted her guests. Her mask was firmly in place, and for a moment, I felt a pang of disbelief that she could carry on like this after everything. When the room quieted for her speech, I knew it was time. I pulled out my phone, my thumb hovering over the send button. The email was ready, addressed to the fundraiser's entire guest list. A recording of Kate's call with her lawyer attached, complete with a transcript of her damning words. Once I pin this on him, I'll take the kids, the house, and everything else. He'll never see it coming. I pressed send. From where I stood, just out of view of the event, I watched the ripple effect begin. Guests' phones vibrated and pinged in unison, the sound cutting through the polite applause as Kate launched into her speech. At first, it was subtle. People pulling out their phones, glancing down, their brows furrowing as they read. Then came the whispers. They spread like wildfire, growing louder and louder until the hum of murmurs filled the room. Kate faltered mid-sentence, her eyes darting around the room. She noticed the shift, the stolen glances, the disapproving stares, the shocked expressions. "What's going on?" she asked, her voice losing its practiced poise. No one answered her. Instead, the whispers turned into audible snippets. "Did you hear what she said? Can you believe this? What kind of person does that?" Her composure cracked. "Excuse me," she barked, her voice shrill now, trying to regain control. But it was too late. The carefully crafted persona she'd spent years perfecting was crumbling before her eyes. Someone in the crowd stepped forward, a local businesswoman who had always supported Kate's charity events. She held up her phone, her expression one of cold disdain. "Care to explain this, Kate?" she asked, her voice carrying across the room. Kate's face went pale. I don't know what you're talking about," she stammered, her confidence slipping with every word. "Oh, really?" the woman replied, shaking her phone. "Because this recording makes it pretty clear who you are. And it's not the person you've been pretending to be." The room erupted into chaos. Guests were no longer whispering. They were openly confronting her, questioning her integrity, her motives. Kate's voice was drowned out by the noise, her protests falling on deaf ears. She looked around, desperate for an ally, but found none. I turned and walked away, the sounds of her unraveling echoing behind me. For the first time in months, I felt like I'd taken back control. She had underestimated me, and now, she was paying the price for her lies and deceit. The fallout was swift and merciless. By the day after the fundraiser, Kate's name was on everyone's lips, but not in the way she'd envisioned. The recording spread like wildfire, forwarded and shared among the town's most influential figures. I made sure of it. Every person who mattered, her charity circles, her social clubs, even her parents, received a copy of the recording. No one could claim ignorance of who Kate really was anymore. Jake, her so-called ally, was the first to abandon ship. I heard through the grapevine that he'd gone radio silent, no longer returning her calls or texts. The golden boy coworker who'd been so eager to get it done faster suddenly wanted nothing to do with her. I wasn't surprised. For someone like Jake, self-preservation was everything, and aligning himself with a sinking ship like Kate would only drag him down. Kate, on the other hand, didn't go quietly. She tried to salvage what little she could of her reputation, calling friends and allies, spinning story after story about how the recording was taken out of context or completely fabricated. But the evidence was undeniable, and the town wasn't buying her lies anymore. Her friends, many of whom had been swept up in her charm for years, stopped answering her calls. Her name became a toxic topic at brunches and cocktail parties, spoken in hushed tones with sideways glances. Even her parents, who had always doted on her, refused to defend her this time. From what I heard, they were furious, not just because of the scandal but because they, too, had believed in the image she'd so carefully constructed. The humiliation hit her hardest when she tried to show up at one of her regular haunts, a boutique cafe where she used to hold court with her circle of admirers. The once friendly staff avoided eye contact, and the usual smiles from acquaintances turned into awkward nods or outright snubs. Kate, for all her bravado, was visibly shaken, her carefully curated world crumbling around her. Meanwhile, I stayed in the background, watching as her lies unraveled. I didn't gloat. There was no satisfaction in watching someone you once loved self-destruct. But there was a grim sense of justice in knowing the truth was out there, that her web of manipulation could no longer ensnare anyone else. By the end of the week, Kate's calls to the kids' school to complain about me were ignored. Her attempts to rally legal support for a case against me were laughed out of the room. Every piece of her plan had fallen apart, leaving her exposed, alone, and exactly where she had tried to leave me, with nothing. When the custody battle began, Kate waltzed into the courtroom like she was stepping onto a stage. She had her crocodile tears ready, dressed in muted colors that screamed victim, and spun her tale with the flair of someone who had rehearsed every word. She painted me as an unfit husband, a controlling monster who had drained her accounts and abandoned her. For a moment, I wondered if the judge might buy into her act. Kate was a master manipulator, after all. But then it was my turn, and I didn't need theatrics. I had the truth on my side. My lawyer presented everything. The recording of her phone call plotting to frame me, the financial records showing how she'd siphoned funds for personal luxuries while neglecting household expenses, and her blatant lies about my supposed violent tendencies. We even included testimony from several of her former friends and colleagues who had distanced themselves after learning the truth. One by one, their statements painted a picture of a woman who was calculating, manipulative, and utterly untrustworthy. Kate's confident demeanor cracked as the evidence piled up. When the recording was played in court, her face turned ashen. The judge leaned forward, listening intently as her words, her own damning words, filled the room. Once I pin this on him, I'll take the kids, the house, and everything else. He'll never see it coming. When the audio stopped, the silence in the courtroom was deafening. Kate tried to recover, insisting the recording was taken out of context, and that she'd only said those things out of frustration. But it was too late. Her desperation was palpable, her arguments crumbling under the weight of the evidence. The judge, a no-nonsense man with little patience for deceit, didn't mince words. "Mrs. Stevens," he said, his tone sharp, "your behavior, as documented here, demonstrates a clear pattern of manipulation and bad faith. This court cannot, in good conscience, place the children in your care." Kate gasped, her hands trembling as she gripped the edge of the table. "Your Honor, please," she pleaded, her voice breaking. "I'm their mother." And as their mother, the judge interrupted, "Your actions should reflect their best interests, not your own selfish agenda. Custody is awarded to Mr. Stevens. Furthermore, given the financial evidence presented, your request for alimony is denied." I sat there, the weight of months of turmoil finally lifting as the judge's gavel came down. Kate's face was a mix of disbelief and rage, her mouth opening and closing as if searching for the right words to lash out. But none came. She was out of moves, and she knew it. As we left the courtroom, she caught up to me in the hallway, her voice low and venomous. "You'll regret this, Adalbert," she hissed, her eyes narrowing. I turned to her, calm and resolute. "No, Kate," I said. "The only thing I regret is not seeing through you sooner." She didn't respond. She simply stood there, watching as I walked away, the kids waiting for me just outside the doors. For the first time in months, I felt a sense of peace. The fight was over and I had won, not out of spite, but because it was the right thing for me and for our children. Even after losing in court, Kate wasn't finished. She was like a cornered animal, desperate and dangerous. I should have known she'd try something drastic. But even I couldn't predict just how low she'd go. A few weeks after the custody ruling, a police officer showed up at my door. My stomach sank as he handed me a notice. Kate had filed a report claiming I'd assaulted her. According to her statement, I'd violently attacked her just days after the court decision. She'd even provided photos of bruises on her arms and face as evidence. At first, I felt a surge of panic. Her lies had worked on so many people in the past. What if this time they stuck? But as I sat with my lawyer, reviewing the report and the so-called evidence, my panic gave way to anger. This wasn't just another lie. This was a calculated attempt to ruin my life completely. Kate had made one crucial mistake, though. She underestimated how much credibility she'd already lost. Between the court recordings, her failed fundraiser, and the countless people who now saw her for who she really was, her word carried little weight anymore. When the investigation began, it unraveled faster than she could have imagined. The bruises she'd shown in the photos were inconsistent with her story. Medical professionals reviewing the images identified signs of makeup rather than real injuries. The police also requested timestamps and metadata for the photos, which Kate conveniently couldn't provide. Then came the final nail in the coffin. Surveillance footage from a local cafe on the day of the alleged incident showed Kate laughing and chatting with friends, completely uninjured. The footage went viral after it was leaked online, and the public's reaction was brutal. She became the subject of mockery and scorn. Her name splashed across social media alongside memes and hashtags calling her out for her lies. When the police dismissed the case for lack of evidence, they didn't stop there. Kate was warned that filing a false report was a criminal offense. Though no charges were pressed, the damage to her already crumbling reputation was irreversible. I heard through the grapevine that even her remaining allies, those who'd clung to her out of loyalty or ignorance, had finally abandoned her. Her name became synonymous with deceit, a punchline in conversations around town. As for me, I refused to let her final scheme consume me. I had my kids, my peace of mind, and the truth. Kate's desperate games only solidified what I already knew. I was free of her manipulation, and she was left with nothing but the consequences of her own actions. As I sit here now, months after the dust has finally settled, I can't help but reflect on everything that's happened. This was, without a doubt, the hardest year of my life. I lost the version of my family I thought I had, the woman I thought I knew, and the life I believed we were building together. But through all of it, the lies, the betrayals, the schemes, I found something I didn't realize I'd lost myself. If there's one thing I've learned, it's the importance of trusting your instincts. Those nagging doubts, those little signs that something isn't right, they're there for a reason. For months, I ignored mine, convinced that the cracks in our marriage were just stress or routine disagreements. But deep down, I knew something was wrong. Looking back, I wish I'd listened sooner, but I'm grateful I listened when I did. Standing your ground is another lesson that came hard but is worth everything. There were moments when I wanted to give up, to let her lies and manipulation win, just to escape the constant battles. But every time I looked at my kids, I knew I couldn't. They deserved the truth. They deserved a future free from the chaos she brought into our lives. And so did I. Now I'm focused on moving forward. The kids and I are settling into a new routine, one that's stable and calm. A far cry from the turmoil we used to endure. We laugh more now, talk openly, and I can see the weight lifting off their young shoulders. They're starting to feel safe again, and that alone makes every fight, every sleepless night, and every confrontation worth it. If there's one thing I want anyone reading this to take away, it's this: Even in the darkest times, there's a way forward. It won't be easy. It will hurt, and you'll question yourself 1,000 times. But the truth has a way of cutting through the lies, of lighting the path ahead, even when everything feels lost. I hope my story serves as a warning and a reminder. Trust your gut, stand firm, and never let someone else define your worth or your future. The pain doesn't last forever, but the lessons you learn will. Now, as I look ahead, I'm not afraid anymore. The worst is behind me, and for the first time in a long time, I feel like the best is yet to come.